Good evening. Welcome to the December 21st meeting of the Westborough Planning Board. Happy holidays, everybody. We have, I'll read the agenda into the record. We have a discussion regarding the Master Plan Implementation Committee, and that includes Kathy Schubert, is that how you pronounce it? I hope, who was town planner for Northborough. We also have a discussion on 400 Fryeburg Parkway site plan review, discussion on the town planner reporting authority, continued public hearing for the amendment to special permit TOV 2014-1 Village Commons 1 Gleason Street, discussion on water line and completion of landscaping for units being occupied over the winter, and a discussion on the reuse of 30-30A East Main Street. As per usual, I have to read the hybrid meeting announcement into the record as well. So bear with me. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting will be conducted in person and via remote means in accordance with the applicable law. That means that members of the public body as well as members of the public may access this meeting in person or via virtual means. In-person attendance will be at the meeting location listed above, and it is possible that any or all members of the public body may attend remotely, with in-person attendance consisting of members of the public. The meeting may also be accessed remotely via Zoom. Members of the public wishing to participate from their remote location are encouraged to email their questions to planning@town.westborough.ma.us. When required by law or allowed by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by in-person attendance or by accessing the meeting remotely, as noted above. Additionally, the meeting will be broadcast live in real time via Verizon Channel 24 and Charter Channel 191 or live streamed online at westboroughTV.org. In the event that we are unable to do so despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of Westborough's website an audio or video recording transcript or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. So, great. So the first item on the agenda is the Master Plan Implementation Committee. And Jim Robbins, I'll let you introduce Kathy and start this discussion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, just to summarize, the board had decided that we were going to investigate hiring a consultant for the Master Plan Implementation Committee, and you wanted to look at several options. I reached out to my colleague, Kathy Schubert, the town planner in Northborough, and Kathy graciously agreed to appear this evening to discuss how they have handled this item in Northborough, because recently they completed their master plan, just about a half a year ahead of us. They also used the consultant, the HB, and she has asked her chairman of her implementation committee, Ashley Davies, is also here from Northborough this evening to answer questions. And I asked Kathy if she would explain the composition of her implementation committee and explain why they chose to go with a consultant. So I'd give it over to Kathy. Kathy's been the planner in Northborough for, what, Kathy, 37 years, maybe longer? Kathy, can you hear me? I think you're on mute there, Kathy.
I'm not sure if she knows she's on or not.
If she's in the bottom right panel, her mic is on.
So, Kathy, take it away, Kathy, if you can hear me.
Yeah, Kathy, if you could unmute.
Oh, I don't know.
Doesn't seem like she's hearing anyone.
Yeah. Do you have a way to text her, Jim?
Okay, yes, I'll text Kathy.
All right.
Ashley, is that you?
Is somebody in the chat? Ashley, could you send her a chat message?
I did.
Oh, I
just
see it now,
chatted.
yeah.
She said she can't hear us. Not
Oh.
sure why.
She may need to change her speaker on the settings. I don't know if she's got it set for headphones or something. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a volume issue, or it could be that she's connected to headphones, and that's why she's so faint.
You hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great, Kathy. We just introduced you. Welcome.
Okay.
We were going to ask you to discuss the
I
implementation.
can't hear anybody, though.
Okay.
Can you hear me, Kathy? No, I guess not.
Yeah, try a different speaker. Well, I guess telling her that is useless.
Okay, I'm sorry, I just switched speakers. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I can now hear you.
Okay, great, Kathy. Welcome to Westborough.
Sorry about that.
No worries, it's understandable. We're all finding this a challenge. So Jim Robbins gave you a nice introduction already, and we just were hoping to hear your thoughts on the implementation process and the recommendations regarding a consultant.
Sure. First of all, thank you for having myself and also Ashley Davies, who is the chairman or chairperson, of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. So at the last minute, Ashley very nicely was able to join us tonight. And Ashley, should pop in whenever you want to, and I'll just make some general statements or just some general information about how we started, how the town of Northborough started, and then probably if people, have questions, that might be a little bit easier. But just a 2-second background on, we, also had hired VHB to do our master plan, and we started the master plan back in, it was 2018, 2019. And 2018, I think. And the planning board, we finished the master plan in about 1.5 years. Planning board adopted the master plan in January of 2020. And then we started talking about internally, about then how to go about implementing the master plan. And throughout the process with the steering committee, we did discuss, having an implementation committee, but we weren't sure at that time exactly what that was going to look like. So with the chairs, we had a chair and a co-chair of the steering committee. With those two individuals, myself, another staff member, and the town administrator, we started talking about how to shape what the implementation committee would look like. And what we ended up doing is we had it as a town administrator. He would be the person that would appoint the people to the committee with the assistance of the Board of Selectmen. So the Board of Selectmen actually issued or sent out a memo advertising for the committee. We have a 13-member implementation committee. We decided from the get-go that what we wanted was a mix of residents. I mean, everyone's a resident on the committee, but a mix of residents and also, existing board members. And we wanted to have, obviously, a little bit of crossover from the steering committee, but also wanted to include, brand new people to the process. So with that, we came up, like I said, with 13 members, and that included, or does include, a member of the Board of Selectmen, a member of our Financial Planning Committee, a member of actually 2 members of the Planning Board, 1 member of our Historic District Commission, the Recreation Commission, the Open Space Committee, and our Council on Aging. And then there's an additional 5 members that are not affiliated with any particular board in town. There might be a couple people that, now that I'm thinking about it, that might be on another board, but their board is not specifically represented on the implementation committee. So everybody applied to the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator, and the 13 people were chosen. And then we ran into COVID. We had some fits and starts about, when we should actually start the implementation committee. We wanted to start it a lot sooner than we did, but we were, just as I just experienced at the beginning of this, even though we've been doing Zoom for over a year, we were hoping that we were going to be able to start meeting in person, but that didn't happen. So started a little bit later than we wanted to, but right now we're 4 meetings in, I think, with the implementation committee. So prior to the implementation committee first meeting, we had again talked about in-house and a little bit with the initial steering committee that did the master plan. We talked about that it made sense to us that where we had the assistance of a consulting firm or consultants to work with us on the master plan, that we really just made this automatic assumption, I guess you could call it, that we also wanted the guidance of a consultant to work with us on the implementation committee. For us, we felt it was that important that we wanted additional people involved other than staff, or in addition to staff and the volunteers on the implementation committee. And again, it made sense to us that we would just continue with the VHB. We had a very positive experience with them on working on the steering committee. Actually, Ashley was a member of the steering committee also. And so what we basically thought of was that given that there was probably about half the implementation committee is made up of new people that have not been on boards before, or not involved in the actual creation of the master plan, we thought that in part that the consultant would give us a lot of continuity between going from the actual writing of the master plan to the implementation of it. In the past, we as many communities in Massachusetts, we have completed other master plans in Northborough, and we have been somewhat successful in implementing those master plans, but we never had an implementation committee to do that. So that was a new experience for us also. But we knew from the get-go that we wanted to have an actual committee see the way to carry out this I don't want to say all the recommendations, but to begin with the major recommendations that absolutely were very obvious recommendations that rose to the top when we were going through the steering committee process. So we really looked at that that having the consultant on board was going to be supplemental to staff, but that they again would provide us with the continuity or additional continuity also. We also looked at that we thought the benefit, or we think the benefit of, and I believe that it's proven to be accurate, and Ashley can comment on that too, but that the consultant would help us in identifying the steps that we would need to take in order to accomplish our goals. And again, it was very obvious in our master plan process what the top 3 to 4 goals are. Definitely the top 2 that we're presently working on. But we thought that it would be very helpful for the consultant to assist us with identifying how we actually could go about doing the implementation of those goals. We also looked at that they would, just as they did through the master plan process, they would be able to provide us with support material. They would be able to provide us with real life examples that they themselves had gone through with other communities. And probably one of the most important things, and even for staff, to teach the staff how to actually take an item, a recommendation from the master plan and how to move it into an action item. How do we actually accomplish that? Because I think, as we all know, it can be very, I think it's very educational, but we can spend a lot of time just talking about how we're going to try to achieve something and spend, I've certainly been in enough meetings, as I'm sure all of you have, where, we talk it to death, but we don't actually come up with a hard set of steps as far as how we're going to carry that out. So, we thought the consultant would be helpful in keeping us on track, teaching us and then also keeping us on track. Another thing that we looked at was that we would probably need assistance with determining whether some of these recommendations were capital items and help us how to transfer them into a capital budget or capital request. And then also that, some of these recommendations might not necessarily be capital items, although a lot of them are, but they might be more policy, that we might have to create some new policy for the town. So we looked at, that the consultant would initially help us determine, the difference between those two. And then, of course, some of the recommendations are going to be, a bit of both. When we first started talking with, or sort of continuing our discussion with VHB, is initially, and the implementation committee is aware of this, that we originally contracted with VHB to do an initial 5 meetings with the implementation committee. And we certainly didn't think that just 5 meetings was going to accomplish everything in the master plan, but that it would take us about 4 to 5 meetings to really get our feet wet, and for the committee to figure out how to work together and what it is that needed to be brought forth to the town administration as far as really turning these items in the master plan in our implementation chapter into reality. And I think maybe Ashley, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think Ashley has had monthly conversations with, I had been out for about a month and a half, so I wasn't participating in these phone conversations, but I know that Ashley and the vice chair, we have monthly phone meetings with our consultant to determine or to finalize, what the agenda is going to be like, what it is that we want to accomplish at the next meeting, and how we do that. And for staff overall, having the consultant has been very beneficial, very helpful. And I think Ashley will probably speak to that also.
Yeah, I think more than anything, the consultant's been able to provide us with examples of how other communities that they've worked with have done things, and how things can be done in terms of organization and mission, powers and ways to enact the goals of the master plan. I've seen that more than this is how you should do it, because every town does it their own way, but they've been able to provide us with those examples and to give us the materials to look at, examples from other communities, but really just laying out all the different options and giving us additional background material when we have questions. So I think it's been helpful in that way. I think it's very different from the master plan process in that they're not really facilitating the way they did before, and they're more taking a back seat and just providing that additional information when it's needed. So, yeah.
Great. Do we have questions from the board for Kathy or Ashley on this?
What is the timing you have on this? I mean, you have, I assume you set long-range, short-range goals, and are you helping do that?
Did you hear that question?
No, I just
Oh.
heard the very, very beginning about the timing.
Yeah,
but-
what is the timing on this process for, as far as long-range and short-range goals? Was that something that was established in the master plan, or is that something you're discussing as part of the implementation?
Well, it's both, but probably primarily when we created the master plan and then finalized the implementation chapter, everything was assigned, the goals and then the recommendations as to how to reach those goals. Everything was already determined. That was a very lengthy part of the steering committee's work about determining what was, short-term, midterm, long-term, and then also dollar values were assigned to those. Now, of course, that, as just time moves forward and, some of those, maybe what we originally thought might have been a low priority, maybe that becomes a medium or a high priority and vice versa. But for us, just as an example, it just every single, public meeting that we had, vision boards, the term for the diagram I'm forgetting right now, but what came through for us constantly was downtown. So we knew that was, there was just absolutely no question amongst the steering committee and amongst the implementation committee that the downtown is the first thing, which is a huge goal, is all about, revitalizing our downtown. And that's going to include everything from, visioning and zoning changes and dimensional changes and so forth. But so that's the first thing that we're working on with the consultant. But just to back up into the time frame, like I said, we had originally looked at that we didn't put a start and a stop time on the implementation committee. We didn't say from the beginning that, the implementation committee is going to be in place for 12 months or 18 months. So there hasn't been an end time set to the committee. And I think that'll, on one hand, that'll be a wonderful thing if we reach a conclusion that we no longer need the implementation committee because everything has been accomplished. And then I guess it's time to start another master plan at that point. But so we didn't put an end time frame on the committee itself. But originally, like I said, we contracted with VHB to participate in 5 meetings with us, and then it'll be as needed from there on out. And we also internally, but we haven't reached this yet with the implementation committee. As I said, we've only met 4 times to date. That we had, again, staff-wise talked about that, for at least probably 6 months, we envisioned meeting once a month. And then once we got, sort of the ball rolling for the first couple of goals, that we might then go to, an every other month or, and then maybe eventually, quarterly. And when I had reached out to other communities about how they did their implementation committees, there really was a wide range. Some towns met once a year, and because they use their implementation committee more or less just to check in to make sure that other departments and other boards were carrying out the master plan. Whereas we're looking at our implementation committee that they're really driving this. They're not the ones that are going to physically be doing the work and putting the budgets together and so forth, but they'll be suggesting and directing other boards and departments about this is what our top goal is, this is how we see it being carried out, and then working with the town administration to make sure that the various departments and so forth are on board doing that.
I just want to make a comment too, building on that. I think it's important, as Kathy said, so many towns do it differently, and kind of working with the consultant ahead of time to really determine what makeup and what sort of mission you want your master plan to have, because I think everybody joining the master plan implementation committee is so excited about really doing these projects and getting them done right away, and setting expectations for the folks on the committee on kind of how this works, and knowing ahead of time, I think is important. And the consultants have, like Kathy said, she reached out to other towns, but the consultants have worked on a lot of these and have examples of how they've been done elsewhere as well. And, choosing the one that's right for Westborough, I think is important ahead of time.
So I have a follow-up question on scope.
Tim, go ahead. Actually, one second. Hazel, does that answer your?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Tim, go ahead.
So just a follow-up on scope. Kathy, I think you described five meetings that you ended up engaging for, and then it's on an as-needed basis afterwards. Is that right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
to the point Ashley just made about sort of a discussion on the scope and charter of the implementation committee and the wide variety of ways that towns approach this, did you arrive on that before you arrived on the scope of work with VHB, or was there consensus? Did they propose the 5 meetings? And then after hearing what you wanted to do, I'm curious about how you define kind of that scope of engagement with them.
Well, we actually did it on a staff level. I worked with, we had created the implementation committee, and from the get-go, they had what their charge is, what they're responsible for, what the expectations are, and as Ashley had said, and also everyone comes with their own energy and their own what they think that the implementation committee should be doing. So that's being woven into what this whole process is, and part of it, it's a whole learning experience for all of us too, because again, we did not create an implementation committee with our other master plans. So it's very exciting, at least to me as a planner, to have this implementation committee in place. But as far as the scope, I had talked with VHB. We had, I think, the same 2 consultants that did ours also did your master plan, and and one of them has moved on to a different firm. But we continue to work with Donnie, and but what I had done was just I had discussed with Donnie probably 2 or 3 times just over the phone what the scope of our what the scope of the implementation committee was. He obviously already knew what goals had risen to the top, and what kind of work was going to be involved with that. So that's how we kind of the 2 of us just crafted that. Okay. About what we thought it would initially take to get everyone educated on the process, and then how to get going with our 2 goals right now that everybody is working on is the downtown, and then also all about sidewalks and walkability, and the the DPW is a big part of that with us.
Great, thank you.
First, Kathy, Ashley, thank you for joining us. I requested for you guys to come in because I really needed your expertise. So my first question is basic, and it seems like you guys are both on the same page, that hiring a consultant is pretty much the only way to go about it. Not hiring a consultant and just having the board run that would probably not be a successful project, correct? Have you had any other towns that have not hired, or from your research, a consultant?
I actually, when I was talking with the various towns about how they ran their implementation committee, it was a mixed bag also about towns that continued working on with their consultant, and then some towns that didn't. And the communities that I had talked to that did not work with a consultant, unfortunately, it was mainly a budget issue. They had the the various communities had expressed, we wish we had put that into the original budget, or maybe we'll be able to go back next year and get some consulting, dollars appropriated, to end up hiring a consultant. So I can't say that every single town that I spoke to had hired a consultant, but a good amount of them had, and then the ones that didn't wished that they had. And again, we just looked at it as, just continuing along with the importance of the master plan, and just having that expert guide us on how to do it. And I think Ashley made an excellent point where they did do a lot of facilitation during the steering committee. And that was, absolutely a part of their job when we were creating the master plan. But, they're letting and again, this was part of our, our goal was that, they're not driving the implementation committee, but they're assisting us all the way along as to how we get from, A to B to C.
That makes sense. Do you think it makes sense to hire the same consulting firm that we use for the master plan, or do we want a different perspective going through the process, or do you think that would actually kind of drag out the process because the consulting firm has to get up to they didn't go through the whole process of putting the master plan together?
Yeah, we did have that discussion in-house about whether it made sense to, put this back out, as we did with the master, the original master plan contract. But it just, the more we talked about it, and of course we were very pleased with VHB. So, there's a huge difference there, that if a community wasn't happy with their consultant, you would go out to bid for somebody else. But we were very pleased with VHB, and it just made sense to us that, they didn't have to relearn the town. They wrote the master plan, so they knew exactly, we could just get right into it. So it made sense to us that we would use the same firm.
That makes sense. And then on your members, you have a board of 13 members, and you elected 5 members. How did you go through that process? I know you had people sign up for it, but how did those 5 members get elected to the board?
The people submitted, we advertised, on the town website, the usual ways. And then, people came forward, and more people than slots that we had available. So, there were a few people that probably weren't happy that they didn't, that they weren't selected for the committee. But so that was a nice position to be in, though, that we had, that much interest. So it was, just through the interview process and what they would be bringing forward, to add to the committee. So. But we thought it was important to have a mix of boards, because again, there's many boards that are responsible, or several boards that are responsible for the majority of these goals and recommendations, or carrying out these goals. And but again, we thought it was very important to just have people that, the prerequisite wasn't that you couldn't have been involved in another board or another project or something in town, but we wanted to have give other people an opportunity. So that's what we ended up with. A mix of some people that have never participated in the town before, and this is their first time, or this is their first time being on a board, and so I think it's been a really good mix.
So you don't think?
And some of the.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh,
Ashley,
sorry.
go ahead.
Some of the chairs have, some of the members have fairly short terms as well. So it gives lots of members of the community to participate. So I think that was really a good idea that Kathy and the administration put that in place.
Yeah, we did 1, 2, and 3 year terms.
Okay. So you don't think 13 members is too many cooks in the kitchen, or you think that's a good number based on the other towns you've talked with?
Well, we had I forgot, Ashley, we, on our steering committee, oh, yeah, there was many more than 13. So 13 was a small number to us compared to our steering committee. But it's worked. I mean, we didn't want to, because, we did talk about whether, should it just be, the planning board, or should it just be the Board of Selectmen? And then, they would, kind of, farm it out to whoever they thought, departments and boards. But we just wanted, across the board representation. And I don't think the 13 has been an issue, as far as, we've done them all Zoom. So, it would be great to be in person, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon for us. But yeah, I don't think it's been, it hasn't been problematic from my point of view to have 13.
All right, very good.
Yeah,
I just want to thank, Ashley, go ahead.
Sorry, just going to say that I don't think it's been unruly at all, and that I think the size is because there are a lot of liaisons to various boards and committees, which is very helpful. If you were to go another way and have no liaisons, and then maybe a smaller committee might be very effective. But the way we've done it, we have input from what's going on to affect the master plan goals and all of the other boards and committees, which I think is helpful.
Perfect. And I just want to thank you both again for answering my questions. And I think it would be vital if maybe in 6 months we could maybe have you guys join another meeting. Just, it sounds like we have a lot of the same objectives going on, and you guys we can learn from you guys. So I really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Jim, Paul,
No,
did you have any
pleasure.
questions?
Yep, Mark, I have a couple. A lot of them have been answered both by Kathy and Ashley's initial comments and the follow-up questions. Probably the last kind of concept is, well, a little bit more granular. And is the committee stating, listen, here's what we want to accomplish. These are the priorities, so go make it happen. And then, the correct departments that are necessary in town, come back to you with feedback on how they're going to achieve it? Or is it more like, here's the priorities, give us your thoughts, are these achievable? Just the handoff and the assignment of the action items for the people that are actually going to do these things. How does that work?
Well, because it was, we haven't had to have any debate or any disagreement about what the first couple of major goals were. I mean, there's other goals that are in the master plan that are listed as high priority, but again, reflecting back on the whole master plan process, there's just no question that the downtown was the first thing that, and again, that's no small task.
No.
I mean, that's
a collection of tasks all by itself.
Right. Exactly. So as part of that, actually, we're moving into, we're working with VHB now. They're drafting a scope for us because we're going to go out for, a consultant to do for lack of a better word, I'm going to call it a mini master plan, but, sort of the, A to Z on how do we accomplish what we want to downtown. And the implementation committee will be overseeing that, but we haven't really fully decided whether, are we going to add another committee that's going to be like a downtown committee, or, is the implementation committee going to, oversee this? I did miss a couple meetings, so I don't think that's been decided yet. I think that we're still discussing that. But so the town administrator and the DPW director, because the second goal about the sidewalks and walkability and connectivity and so forth very much involves him, and we're in the process of putting in a complete street application, and so that's why the DPW has been heavily involved from the beginning. But because the selectmen are absolutely behind the number one goal is of downtown. And, with ARPA money and, so it's all, we believe it's all going to nicely come together. And it's kind of, we didn't know it at the time, but it's kind of perfect timing, that we're going to be able to use ARPA money for this. So, Jim, I don't know if that actually answered the whole question. I'm sorry.
I can chime in as well.
Please, Ashley.
We started off the process kind of looking through the short-term goals as well as the overall goals and getting everyone on the committee's top priorities, and then trying to address, okay, these are some items we can check off really quickly, and these are the ones that we really want to focus on. And what we've done is get reports back from all of the various boards and committees that could be working on these projects to see what they've already done, what they might be working on, and to encourage them to focus on some of the goals in the master plan. And then the items that are more town staff oriented, like the sidewalks in the downtown, is where the town administrator and the DPW director have been really heavily involved. And we've been working together to try to ensure that our goals are aligned. So I do think we're not just checking in, we're kind of trying to drive the process as Kathy had said, but it is definitely, it's been tricky because it's not a committee that's ever existed before, and trying to figure out those dynamics has been interesting. The DPW has a certain budget, they have a plan for the next several years. And so working in our top goals is difficult, but we're working together on how to achieve that. So that kind of goes back to my comment about trying to figure out ahead of time exactly what roles and responsibilities the committee should have. It might be helpful ahead of time. It might be helpful to work out as you go along. I'm not sure, but that's kind of where we're at. And as Kathy said, because the downtown and the sidewalks are standalone projects, it's been a little easier for us to just work directly with staff and make those things happen. So
Great. That's very helpful. Thank you very much.
Jim.
And again, I would thank you. All the rest of my questions were answered, Mark, and all the prior comments. And again, I would echo, thank you so much for your time. And it's super helpful to hear about your experience.
Great, thanks, Jim. Kathy and Ashley, Lester Hensley is here, who is chair of our master plan steering committee, and I just wanted to ask him if he had any questions on this process or any comments on his experience with VHB that might be helpful.
Thank you, Mark. I think you've
Okay.
answered my questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Lester. Just always value your input. Jim Robbins, did you have anything?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mark. Again, thank you, Kathy and Ashley, for coming in this evening. It's great to get the perspective of the planner as well as the layperson, Ashley, that's leading this effort, because it's difficult often for someone that comes into the process cold and from the public that isn't used to dealing with a lot of the jargon that planners use and a lot of the regulations that are required at the local level, whether it's zoning or the town charter or typical land use practices, et cetera. It's tough to get up to speed, so I admire and appreciate the effort that you've put into serving the town of Northborough as a volunteer, so I know Kathy is grateful for that. It's good to see that on other committees in other towns as well. For me, at least, it's great to see that. I have two questions. Well, actually, the first one is a comment, and I just want you to verify this. It seems like I heard, Kathy, that, and Ashley too, that it would be wise to reach back to members of the advisory committee, the master, in our case, in your case, the steering committee, to see what they think are issues that need to be discussed, because eventually, when projects are implemented, they have capital impact. And all too often, planners think of their projects in a vacuum. They think about creating land use regulations, zoning bylaws, going to town meeting and getting it passed. They don't always think about what the impact would be to the taxpayer sitting in the chair, who's going to be thinking about what's this going to cost me 5 years from now. So you mentioned the Department of Public Works, and obviously an integral portion of your implementing your downtown plan, but they would be for many of the goals that we have as well, particularly our wastewater management plan and some of the work that we want to do to revitalizing our downtown as well. So it sounds to me like you're recommending that we don't miss that part very early on in the process.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And again, that was part of the reason why we wanted to have the consultant, to guide us through that process. Like I said, where, Jim, I agree with you, sometimes I just get so focused, or planners just get so focused on thinking that it's just a land use goal. And Ashley's on our open space committee too. And we get focused on, well, it's just, we have to protect that piece, but we don't look at, well, what are the implications of that, like you said, to the taxpayer. So the right off the bat, we've been talking about, the capital nature of this and how it's all tied together, because we want to, do things right away at town meeting. And, we want to get this downtown plan, started. So capital has to be a part of it.
I think too, there's a lot of funding coming through the Commonwealth with the ARPA funding and, MVP funding and all of these things, that getting out ahead of it and lining up the projects so that the funding can come through in time, I think is important. So that's sort of our thinking with getting the DPW items done in advance. There's lots of funding for pedestrian-oriented activities. So I think right now is a great time to be working on this. And so thinking of that as well, it's important.
Was VHB, have they been helping you write grants or do things like that to get state money or what federal money that might be available for your projects?
Well, we haven't yet, but we certainly did talk to them, that would be something that they would, help us with. And they have pointed out some grant programs, already to us, but we have not applied for, as a community, we have not applied for any yet. But we would definitely, enlist their help.
Thank you.
Last question, Kathy. This might be a quick answer. So what do you think is the life expectancy of your implementation committee? How long do you think that the committee will serve? When we did our last master plan, it served for about 2 years and then left it to the planning board to continue.
Like I said, we haven't put we didn't set out with a, the committee's only going to be around for so many years, but where we appointed people to 3-year terms, we're thinking probably about 3 years, but wouldn't it be great if it was less than that, because that means it worked, that we were able to carry out, what we had set out to do. So I would say 2 to 3 years for us, Jim, because we did appoint people for 3 years, but we're not just going to have them hang around for the sake of it if we end up accomplishing everything.
Thank you.
Fred, did you have anything? Okay. I had a couple of questions. So when I assume you had to go to town meeting for the cost of the consultant. Do you remember any significant or memorable comments from the public at town meeting? It's impossible for us to predict what's going to come up at town meeting, but if you had something that came out at your town meeting, it might be that might be memorable that we could expect at ours.
But we actually didn't have to go to town meeting.
Oh, you didn't?
We had existing funds in the planning budget to hire the consultants. So that's what we did.
Okay, well, that answers that question. And the other question is, what town staff regularly attends the implementation meetings? I assume the town planner, but any other staff in regular attendance?
Yes, so far we've had the DPW director at, like I said, we've met 4 times. So I think the DPW director and the town administrator actually has been at 2 of the meetings. DPW director has been at 3 of the meetings. And then technically, I'm not sure. Well, it's just a matter of probably a month or so of filling my position. I don't know if Jim had mentioned that in the beginning, but I'm retiring at the end of this month. So sadly, I'm going to be leaving the whole master plan process, which has just been a fantastic group, to the steering committee and the implementation committee to work with. But so whoever, is the next town planner, they will definitely be, taking on responsible, for staffing the committee. And I think in the interim, it'll probably be the DPW director for a couple of meetings, but those are the two staff people that have been there, and primarily the town administrator. And we don't expect him to be at every meeting, but he participated, to talk about his agreement with the downtown, and that he's looking for direction from the implementation committee. How much money do we need? It's just a great time right now with. Unfortunately, why we have ARPA money, but but the fact that we have it, like Ashley said, it's working right now.
Yeah, and I think the town administrator's presence has been helpful because there are so many big projects that can really impact the town's overall budget really strongly, and taxpayers as well. So having him there to kind of guide us and give us a dose of reality has been helpful.
And I guess my last question is kind of an extension to Jim Ball's question. And I'm sure it's kind of early in the process for you to say, well, we've accomplished that goal, but I'm just trying to understand how, let's say, the implementation committee decides that a zoning change is necessary, how that would translate to the planning board, or, to actually get zoning changed to follow that vision. I understand you have a mini master plan that might take care of that, but I'm just trying to understand how the implementation committee communicates their directives to the other committees in town, and how those have been received.
Well, we have, on our committee, we have two members of the planning board. So there's a direct line already to the planning board. And as Ashley had mentioned, we've got, the people that are on the implementation committee that are also serving on other boards, we have them, back and forth, checking in with their board, that they're a member of. So, so the planning board, as Ashley had mentioned, the planning board went through what they thought, were the most important goals. And the Historic District Commission, did the same thing, and the Open Space Committee. And so everyone has at least initially voiced, their sort of their wants and desires from their board's perspective. But just like, say something very specific, such as a zoning change, it would be discussed by the implementation, say something came out of the downtown study. So it would be discussed by the implementation committee, and then, communicated back to the planning board, not only through the two members, but, from how I envision it, from the implementation committee, whether it be the someone from the implementation committee going to the planning board, or, memos, or, but what we've established so far is I think, decent lines of communication. And I see that continuing.
Right. All right, anything else from? Okay. So Kathy, much appreciated, but I'm going to ask you for a little more of your time. We have an agenda item tonight on discussion on town planner reporting authority, and I think Jim may have prepared you for this, I hope.
Yeah, he did.
Okay, so the town is currently considering a transition from the town planner reporting directly to the planning board and instead having that position report to the community development director. Could you describe Northborough's charter in that respect, and then your experiences with that as far as, I don't know if you have a recommendation one way or another, or just some advice from a town that does it differently?
Yeah, sure. It has always been in this community, and I, have the longevity to say, well, it's been like this for 30 years. But the town planner's position has always reported to the town administrator. I actually don't think that we have any staff in our municipal makeup that reports directly to a board. Everybody reports to the town administrator, and so basically, the hire and fire, authority is with the town administrator. So I guess technically the only one that you would say that reports directly to the board would be the town administrator to the Board of Selectmen. So I have not worked, I have worked for other communities, including the town of Westborough, way back when, but I have not worked, most of my professional life has been spent here in Northborough. And like I said, it's always been reporting directly to the town administrator. I work with many boards, so it's not just the planning board. And I'm sure the same thing is true with Jim, that, the planning board is not the only board that we're responsible for. I'm also direct staff to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and we're going to be reinvigorating our housing partnership. That won't be with me, obviously, but that's one of the top recommendations out of the master plan is about the housing partnership. But and then also, Conservation Commission, Open Space Committee, those are all part of my department. And again, those are all boards that as staff, we serve as liaison to, but none of us directly report, to any of those boards. I've always, I see it as definitely beneficial to be reporting to the town administrator as opposed to any of the one, to any one specific board, because each one of those boards has a different reason for being, has a different makeup. Sometimes it's political, sometimes it's not. Whereas to me, reporting to the and being part of the town administration, it's you're removed from that, and I think that's always worked very well here.
Questions for Kathy on that subject? Anything? All right, well, I don't have anything else. I appreciate the comments. It kind of echoes something that I had, some of the information. I talked to a couple other town planners who agreed that it takes a lot of the political aspect out of it. And, I think that's a benefit to the change. With that, we'll say good night to you and have a great holiday. You're welcome to stay and watch the rest of our meeting, but I'm sure you've given us enough of your time already. So thank you so much, Kathy and Ashley, for joining us.
All right. As much as I love planning boards, yeah, I'll take my leave too.
All right. Enjoy.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, and good luck.
Retirement. Okay.
All right. Good luck with everything. Thank you.
So since I brought that up, I'd like to finish that item on the agenda. Jim, do we have any other discussion on the town planning?
I don't have any further discussion. I leave it to the board to talk about it, and I know I've talked to several of you individually about this, and I talked to Kathy about this at length. I'm trying to stay neutral on this.
Sure. No, and I appreciate that, Jim. It's a understandable position. So I guess to the board, any further discussion on this? Jim Ball, anything?
Maybe a question for you, Mr. Chair, before opinions, which is what's the process here?
Well,
This is a warrant and a charter change. So who's drafting a warrant? You know, are we writing a letter of recommendation to the town? Are we taking a vote? You know,
Yeah,
where are we in the governance of this?
Yeah, I think that's a question we have to kind of probably meet back with the Board of Selectmen, discuss who's going to sponsor any type of article, who's going to draft it, whether it's most likely town council would draft it. You know, I know there's been some draft language circulated on how the charter would be rewritten, but, you know, the question of who would sponsor it.
Yeah, I guess I'm saying upstream from that, we're at a point of just discussion right now.
Right.
We know what's the recommendation on the table is to do. Are we a veto power here? Do we need to, you know,
No,
somehow vote to approve this, to have it considered further, or what's
Yeah,
the deliverable here that we're
I think the Board of
discussing?
Selectmen is looking for us to make a recommendation on this because they, you know, they don't want to move this forward if the planning board objects. You know, as far as who's going to sponsor the article, I think we would probably co-sponsor it. As far as procedures go, you know, I'm not sure what other questions might come out. You know, I've stated most of my position on it.
I wouldn't think we would co-sponsor something that would be affecting the change to our board, right?
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
because
it's
I would think that would be a conflict, because we're pushing one stance
yeah.
that's affecting us.
Certainly, you know, once a warrant article is drafted, we would take a vote on whether to support or not to support that article, because it has, you know, it is relative to our business. Jim, do you have any comments?
I mean, it struck me that this was something that the select board would be bringing forward, and they were indeed asking for our input and then ultimately support or lack thereof, depending on how we all felt. So that was my understanding, but I'm not certain that's the process.
So maybe we have questions for the select board as to exactly what their expectations are of us. Should we convene another joint meeting or ask them for that so we can, you know, if they want to vote, we
Clarify
can
that.
discuss it at that time? And I'm not in any rush to take a vote on it, but, you know, I think they want to try and put this on a spring warrant.
Yeah, I think we need to have a follow-up meeting, because I'm in no position to vote at this point.
Okay.
We certainly are not in a position to vote.
Well, what other questions do we need?
I would ask them to draw a motion, you know, what is it that they want us to respond to?
Okay.
I mean, I've read the staffing study. I think that the change has been speculated about, but, you know, if they want us to go on record publicly, not all of us may have consensus. You know,
Okay.
we're changing the charter, so it's bigger than just a vote to change the reporting lines for the town planner position.
All right.
That's the net of it, but
So
I
I
think
think-
we need to know from a governance perspective, what kind of a recommendation do they want?
So specifically, we should ask them for the language that they want us to support or not support.
Deliberate, yeah.
And then we should probably convene another joint meeting with them.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I
So-
think we ought to have, any draft language we should discuss before we go back to talk to the. Board
No,
of Selectmen.
absolutely. I think we would get that language, discuss it as a board, and then have the joint meeting. I agree with that, yeah.
Yes.
So let's, Jim, could you follow up with Christie and ask her if there's a specific warrant article already drafted or, what exactly their expectations are from us at this point. And then if there is language, get that circulated to the board so that we can discuss it at our next meeting.
And I certainly hope it'll be better than what we got from Christie before, because quite frankly, that made no sense to me, and I certainly couldn't agree with what she sent out originally.
Okay.
All right, I note that Lester Hensley is here, and perhaps he'd like to make a comment on the
Sure.
proposed change.
Lester, as a former chair, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Thank you, Mark. Lester Hensley, 39 Arch Street. Yeah, I guess I've given some thought to this notion, and Tim, you're right, this is not just a simple change, right? This is a fundamental change to the charter. And I remember when the Charter Review Committee was considering this, former chair Brian Bush was on that review committee and spoke vigorously in opposition to this notion. I think you've heard also from former Chair Durrett, and who feels similarly. And I'll be honest, and frankly, until I heard Kathy tonight, I came here feeling fairly strongly that we should proceed in this direction very carefully. And it's good to hear from another planner who has had a favorable experience with a report outside of the board. That said, I think we need to think about changes like this and try not to be influenced by the context of the individuals that are in the positions now, as well as the circumstances that the community finds itself in a given short-term period of time, right? We're talking about a fundamental change to a charter that was put together with a specific intent. And, so it's always important to look back at what that intent was and then what the motivation for the change is. So it seems to me that there are two possible motivations for the change. One is administrative, to clarify the administrative reporting and managerial lines, the higher fire authority that Kathy referred to. And for that reason, I can see there being merit to making the change. I think certainly when I was chair of the planning board, I did not fulfill at a satisfactory level the managerial role of the planner. I felt it to be too much of a time burden, too much of a sort of a stretch for the purpose that I was on the planning board, right? So I don't think that whether or not, Mark, you've done a better job or Brian did a better job or whatever, there isn't a sufficiently organized structure to the managerial role for the planner. So to the extent that that can be clarified with a change to the charter, that might be a good thing. Whether or not the reporting line should be to the newly created community development director in Westborough's case, or whether it should perhaps be, as in Kathy's case, directly to the town manager, I think is something that should be given some consideration. And the basis of that consideration is the bridge to the second motivation for possibly making this change. So the second motivation for possibly making this change would be that there is a desire or an agenda to bring the planner and the planning board's actions into closer compliance with another motivation, right? And that might be that if there is a desire to accelerate economic development, for example, for a reason, there might be feelings that the planner and or planning board are potentially a drag on that by bringing the planner into the influence of a a part of the administration that is more, pro-economic development or development, that might speed things up, be more efficient, et cetera. And it's in that consideration of that motivation that I think we have to be really careful, because it's my belief that the intent for the separation of the reporting authority of the planner was to preserve some sort of checks and balances on the centralization of authority or power over pure, over any one agenda. And what I learned in my time as chair of the planning board, which 5 years of which was simultaneously as the chair of the Economic Development Committee, was that many of those priorities of both boards were shared, and where they overlapped and were shared, we were able to make significant progress in terms of taking down barriers to inefficiency in permitting, to forming and executing on a zoning, what did we call it? The zoning
The bylaws?
rewrite committee, examination committee, whatever it was. And we made significant changes that improved the permitting process and the approval process and everything else. But there are certain aspects of public administration that are intentionally slow, and that are intentionally slowed by setting up a juxtaposition of priorities. And when you go back to the inception of planning and Euclidean zoning, it was designed with the intent that the planning board and the planner act to preserve the rights of the citizens of the community to the peaceable enjoyment of their personal residences, their personal property. And so in Massachusetts and in Westborough following on that, there was this intentional creation in the charter to keep those powers separated so that there is a sphere of operation of the planners to be sure that the actions that are being taken respect the whole, and respect the whole community, and respect the rights of the residents, who, after all, are the biggest taxpayer in the community. It's not the developers. They are big, and they're big commercial taxpayers, but they pale in comparison to the tax paid by the residents. So as we learned in the master planning process, there is this desire for more development in Westborough, but there's a very strong desire for that to be balanced against the preservation of quality of life and community. So the community development role needs to respect both words in that title, right? We have the community, what does the community want, and what do the developers want, is going to be a lifelong tension. And I think Westborough's done an extraordinary job thus far of balancing the needs of both and providing a community in which both can thrive. But I think that's in part because of the separation of duties of the planning department and the planning board from the rest of the reporting structure. So for me, I understand the need to, I, after all, joined the Economic Development Committee and I continue to be an employer in town, and I run a business, and my business is growing, and I want to expand it, and I know there's certain rules within that I have to do that. I joined the Economic Development Committee because of my frustration at the time with the bureaucratic process of permitting, and through my involvement in the work of everybody at the time, we did a significant job of improving that, and I think Westborough does a remarkable job of doing that. I think there's a point that you can push that too far, and this, for me, begins to tread that line of pushing it too far. So perhaps the solution is not necessarily to report into the community development department, but to have that direct report perhaps to the town manager. Maybe there's a compromise there. But the autonomy of the planning board should not be altered, and I don't think it can be easily altered, right? Because you're elected board members. Tim, did you have a clarifying question?
Go ahead.
Just on that point, I wanted to follow up with you. As I understand this change and the desire to see it in writing, this doesn't change the statutory authority of this board or our responsibilities in one iota. We're talking about the administrative aspect of the town planner position,
Right.
and to whom it reports. So I guess I would say, if that's your understanding as well, subject to be clarified, it doesn't change the mandate of this elected board to act on behalf of the citizens.
No, I'm not asserting that it does.
Okay.
But the planner has, in the current structure, more autonomy to act independently of the agenda of the rest of the administration than the planner would reporting into the administration. That's my point.
Lester, just a couple of comments before I explore that concept. I'm not trying to talk you into one direction or another, but just to let you know that we've done some homework, or at least I have. I talked to two other town planners besides Kathy's comments tonight, one who reports to a mayor and one who reports to a land use director, which is essentially similar role as a community development, but different title. Both were completely supportive of that structure and dismissive of the idea of reporting directly to the planning board for similar reasons.
Sorry, Mark, can you hold the mic right in front? I can barely hear you.
Had similar comments that Kathy did about the political ramifications of reporting directly to the planning board. I also, agree with you on the administrative duties. I don't believe that a citizen volunteer should be the one with oversight on payroll, on attendance, and other facets that really belong with a town employee, I think. I also strongly believe that there's potential. All right. So if you have one person as town planner giving guidance to the planning board, and that one person, for whatever reason, whether they're inexperienced or, God forbid, corrupt or whatever, if they're the only one giving advice, or maybe they're the ones, maybe that town planner is the one who's pro-development, right? There's no other guidance. You're much more likely to get, I'd rather have more eyes looking at the advice that the planning board is getting, rather than just one person giving me that advice. I'd rather have a whole department giving me that advice. Secondly, I foresee a day when Jim retires and we have a new town planner. I would rather have them have some guidance and some acclimation help, rather than just come in here and expect a board who may or may not be experienced, may or may not understand our zoning code, our zoning bylaws. I'd rather have that new person have some guidance from, from some day-to-day guidance rather than twice-a-month guidance. Or, again, as chair, I feel like it would fall on me to train that person. And I don't think that's the role of a citizen volunteer. I like your concept of possibly having the town planner report to the town manager. I'd be interested, though, one of my frustrations with the way the charter's written now is that the town planner could never be the community development director, because the community development director has to report to the town manager and could not report to the planning board, so you couldn't have that dichotomy. I find that frustrating because I think the community development director should have a planning background And it's disappointing to me that we couldn't offer a town planner the advancement potential. I believe in hiring from within. So it might be possible, though, if the town planner reported directly to the town manager, for them to advance into that position. So I'd like to explore that a little more. I think that's a good concept that we should consider. Anyway, I didn't mean to, overwhelm you with my thoughts on it, but
No, not at all. I think you make a very good point in that regard. I don't disagree at all with any notion of the administrative side of it. But it's possible to achieve the administrative side of it while preserving the intent of some separation from, within the power structure to whom that individual reports. And then that might be a solution. I don't know.
right. Jim Ball, did you have something?
Oh, I wasn't muted. Mark, I would echo most of your comments, but I actually am also intrigued by the idea of a direct report, so that does create still some separation. I think, as you know, Lester, I've served in economic development. It is fascinating, the overlap, and yet at the same time, the differing demands and needs of the entire community. So I agree with Mark's thoughts in terms of us getting feedback from multiple parties, but I do like that idea of potentially a direct report, depending on what the thoughts are from Christie and the rest of the group.
Yeah, the only question I have on that is something that Kathy said about the town planner reporting to the ZBA, reporting to Concom,
She didn't say reporting to.
well, working with. I think she said that the
Actually,
town
they
planner.
work, what she described was that they work under her. It was her description of that, I believe, was that they report, actually, they are part of her office.
Right. I guess, as long as there was some way for all of those departments to interact cohesively, and I think it functions fairly well now, so I can't foresee that changing if the planner reported to the town manager.
No, I can't see how reporting to the town manager would alter that. I think there's considerable collaboration between departments now. I think and this recommendation is, again, notwithstanding anybody who's currently in a position in any way, but going all the way back to what the intent of the charter was in terms of that original reporting structure, right? There was a reason for why it was done. And if there's a way to preserve that intent while achieving the administrative oversight function, then I think that's an avenue that should be pursued.
I'm going to have to go back and look at the staffing study to see if there was a rationale for why it would report.
I think the rationale would be that desire for collaboration and, that desire to have all of the bodies that could affect any decision reporting into a single authority. And so, I can understand that from a staffing study perspective, but I think that staffing study perspective perhaps didn't look hard enough at the original intent of the charter and why it was always a deliberate separation of power there.
Right, but doesn't having the town planner report to the town manager essentially serve that rationale?
Yes, absolutely, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
So I don't see that suggestion as being against the staffing study recommendation.
No,
Yeah.
I don't. I don't know what the staffing study said. Tim, do you remember? You read it more recently.
You mentioned the charter change a couple of times, and
Yeah.
Steve talked about it the last time he was here. What date was that? What year was that approximately?
The Charter Review Committee?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. I don't know. Somebody with a better memory than me, 5 years ago?
Yeah, I'd say
I think it
5,
was
6 years ago.
2018.
Yeah, I think that's about when
2017.
conservation was
I think,
changed
yeah.
from.
So, there was a considerable debate about this issue already. We could go back and look at the record, but.
So it was around the time that you were involved with the planning board and the EDC as well?
Yeah, no, it was while Brian was chair, so I had probably just stepped down and Brian was chair.
After that.
Right.
I guess I would just make the comment then that the lack of managerial structure to execute the job under that charter has been a gap from that point to this. And
Yeah, I think it precedes that, but yes, perpetuated, yeah.
so
Yeah.
we're not making any progress to close that gap, and the charter was changed without thought to how that was actually going to be executed. And I would also suggest that in my understanding, this isn't about, this is about a board performing that managerial function, not about the chair of the board or any other individual, but the whole board.
Well, I mean, there is a model for that. I believe the school committee is responsible for the evaluation and essentially the management of the superintendent, and they follow state guidelines, as a state construct for how that's done. But they take that on as a significant one of their primary duties, right? So there is a model for that, and one could propose that the planning board take on the state model for 360-degree evaluation of a report in, but I'm not sure that it's ever, I don't think that's what the planning board wants, or that it's necessarily the most effective way to go.
Well, and I would just say not only that, but people continuing to point back at the charter change is the reason not to make a change now. There was never the administrative structure put in to practice on this board to set goals and perform.
No, it was I believe the wisdom of the Charter Review
let me
Committee to
clarify
leave it the way it was, but, and,
Lester, let me just clarify something for Tim. The charter change did not change the structure of the town planner or planning board at all. The charter change that we're referring to basically set up the community development office and put the conservation director reporting to the community development officer. So
I was referring to the charter for the planning board that Steve Direct commented on.
Even prior to that charter change, whether 4 or 5 years ago, the town planner, I mean, Jim's been here 26, I don't even know now.
To me, 29 years.
29 years, and for that entire time and even before him, the town planner reported to the planning board, and the planning board had managerial duties. So that's
Good,
always
thanks for that.
So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, it helps a lot. It says we haven't had a managerial structure in place for 29 years.
I agree with that. Anyway, so.
I think the board has done a more thorough and less thorough job depending on the board over that period of time, but it's not clear, and it could be clarified for sure. Yeah.
So I think the biggest question, one other thing, that we've heard before is that the planning board would still have concurrence on hiring and firing, which I think is an important thing to keep in the charter. I don't want that to change. But I think we should ask the town manager, Jim, if you could ask Christie what the feasibility is of having the town planner report to the town manager instead of the community development director, because I think that's a really good concept that we need to explore a little
Yeah,
bit.
I'm not opposed to the town planner appointing to the town, reporting to the town manager. My objection all the way along in this has been that the town planner report to the community development director, who then reports to the town planner, to the town administrator. It just didn't make sense to me. So I would not object to if the direction of authority were changed in that particular way. I don't think that would really interfere with it. It would also take, since the planning board has not seemed to have really been involved or taken the responsibility for administrating the administrative responsibility. Maybe other boards have done this, maybe the school board does it. I don't know how the library board works, but the 3 elected boards in town are the school board, the library board, and the planning board. And so I'm not sure how the library board works. I figured that was how the school board worked, but if the planning board is not, or feels that they are not able to do the administrative type of work that the school board does, or I think the library board does, well then perhaps a change where that administrative work and evaluation is done by the town administrator or the town manager might be appropriate in this particular way, so the planning board can do what they're supposed to be doing. But it was this independent interim level that I objected to, where we were reporting, where the planner had to report to a community development person, because I felt then we would no longer have the separation that was so important between the various boards and actions and committees in town. And so that there's, obviously they work together, they can continue to work together, there's no reason not to, but you know, I think that to streamline it in that way makes sense. And I also think it puts people on a level par, which I think also is important. It doesn't put someone over someone else. You know, we hired the town manager to manage the town, and consequently, it seems appropriate that you know, that whoever the town manager is, they should be doing the administrative type of work, and that they could do the evaluation.
All right, so let's explore, go
One
ahead.
more point for the record.
Go ahead,
Point
Tim.
you were making, and then your direction to Jim was a little different. I think I agree with you that the advise and consent on the appointment of the position needs to be clarified by the
Well, I think
by
that's
the
already
town,
been, I think that's
by the
already
town
been-
manager. No, I'm not talking about the reporting lines. I'm talking about the role of this board in the hiring and termination. That's a different issue.
Yeah, no, and I thought they had addressed that already.
I haven't seen anything in writing.
did.
I'd like to know what it is they're proposing to do in that regard, in writing.
Well, okay,
They
well,
did
next
verbally
time,
agree
let's
with that
ask-
in our
let's
last
ask for
joint
that
meeting.
In writing, because I agree that needs to be laid out and included.
Thank
So,
you.
Jim, I think you understand what we're, okay.
I do. Jim
If I
Ball
could
has
just-
comment.
Lester, go ahead.
Sorry, I don't want to prolong this much. Sorry. I've invoked two of my past chairs in this discussion. I don't want to suggest that they have even heard of this middle ground concept or approve of it. I think probably what you heard from Steve Durrett is that he probably fairly strongly believes that the planner should continue to report to the planning board. So to me, there are only two ways out of this. One is that the planning board adopts and is given a mandate to implement a strict administration process and the reporting remains the same, or that the reporting go up to the town administrator for that purpose, right? And then what authority the planning board retains over approving the candidate to fill that position, that's, I agree, something else that should be put in writing. There's what we've done in the town. We have, when you look to the school board again, right, we have 3 elevated positions now in the town, appropriately so. We have the community development director, who has a considerable mandate and considerable authority. We have the school superintendent, who has a specific and considerable mandate and authority. And we have the town planner, who has a very specific and considerable authority. And those 3 on a level playing field, if you will, or place in the hierarchy, to me, are an appropriate division of authorities and powers supporting up to a town administrator or manager, whatever the authority is. And I think that's a structure for a strong town and a strong community with good balance of powers and separations of authority.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have other departments that report directly to the town manager, too. I think that's a feasible structure. So let's explore that. I don't want to, we have a couple other items on the agenda. Lester, I will
Appreciate
say,
the time.
we're going to have an opening on planning board if you want to pull papers. So
Thank you for the
we would love to
consideration.
we would love to have you back. You know that. I would. I will
you. I
talk you into
appreciate
that.
what you do.
Talk you into that another
Thanks.
day. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Lester.
All right, next item on the agenda is a discussion on the 400 Fryeburg Parkway site plan review. Jim, you have a draft site plan decision for us. We closed the hearing on this, right?
Yes, the public hearing was closed on December 7th, our last meeting.
So do you want to take us through the decision quickly?
I'm happy to. Is there anyone here from Verizon?
Yeah, John Soper's on the Zoom call.
Okay, I know that Mike Scott is also online. I see his avatar.
Oh, yes, Mike is on the call. So, gentlemen, have you had a chance to read the draft decision and make any suggestions? Are you comfortable with the decision as it's written?
This is Mike Scott, and yes, I shared it with John and Attorney Twidarski who is also on, who was present at the last meeting.
Okay, and they're comfortable with the way it's written and the language?
Yes, I did forward them the more recent revision from Jim, which appears to have added DPW's conditions relative to some of the inspections, more or less the boilerplate Westborough DPW requirements, and I didn't get any negative feedback on that.
Okay. All right, well, we'll see if they have any questions as Jim takes us through the decision. Jim, I'll ask you to start that process now, okay?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you have a decision in front of you dated today, December 21st. You will see that there are redlined changes recommended by both counsel for Verizon and our Department of Public Works town engineer. The changes recommended by Verizon are in red, and changes by town engineer and myself are in blue. And I won't read the first couple pages, which have to deal with existing conditions in the application. Rather, I'll go straight to the conditions of approval, which begin on the top of page 4. The additions made by the town engineer are, as Mike said, typical Department of Public Works requirements. She asked that they be memorialized in the front of the conditions as general. She wants to make sure that they're not missed in her comment letter. So we added them up front, all under the first condition. The next couple conditions have to deal with our planning board typical requirements of hours of operation, loading and offloading of materials, the fact that we don't want anyone parking on Fryeburg Parkway during construction, but rather that all commercial vehicles and construction equipment be maintained on the site during the project, even during staging and cleanup, and that also all loading and offloading of materials must also be on the site, and there must be no work on Fryeburg Parkway. Everyone recognizes that Fryeburg Parkway is a private road, but we still need to maintain the free flow of traffic for public safety reasons. That's why we don't want anything to be loaded or stored on Fryeburg Parkway. So number 6 begins talking about our typical boilerplate requirements for lighting, and that we only allow lighting structures to be 20 feet in height, and that they all are full cutoff and downward focused with no light glare or light pollution caused to adjacent properties. Also, all lighting mounted on the building must be full cutoff and downward focused. Number 7 was modified by the town engineer, and it has to do with stormwater and pollution prevention plans. This is typical. I know that Mike saw this, and no surprises there. Number 8, so this is what our discussions were with Verizon for mitigation to their project. So Verizon, I'm going to read the condition as proposed by the attorney representing Verizon. Verizon has informed the town it provides discounted rates for municipalities which use its services. Verizon agrees to work with the town to reach an agreement for Verizon phone and communication services for municipal emergency responders at the police, fire departments, and the appropriate staff at the Department of Public Works at rates and terms commensurate with rates and terms charged to other municipalities in this area for comparable agreements. I had asked that this agreement be reached prior to the certificate of occupancy. The Verizon attorney did not want it to be time-bound. I leave that to the planning board to discuss.
Any questions on that? Any comments? Leave that condition in.
Just, Jim, clarify me what you just said about timing on this. I mean,
Yeah, so if you look at the copy that you should have,
Yeah.
there's a strikeout of the last sentence. The last sentence says, "These discussions shall take place in reached agreement prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy." And the council felt there should be no time limit on that.
Well,
I mean, I would think there needs to be some sort of time I mean, I don't mind that we've taken the condition out about the certificate of occupancy, but I think there should be some sort of a time that's going to be go in, which we could say after the issuance of the certificate of occupancy. I don't want this to drag on for 6 months while, you know, there's this indecision about who's paying what on such. I mean, I think there needs to be some sort of a time limit as to when this agreement, you know, has to be full force of effect, because if they're already using it, then who's paying what? And, you know, is the town gonna have to pay? And then if it turns out that it's less, rebates come back and forth. So, as I said, I'm a little concerned about leaving this open-ended with no time by which an agreement needs to be made.
Yeah, so how long is the construction? It's going to probably take them a year to build.
I don't know, Fred may have a better idea. I know the project is on hold right now.
Michael, do you have any idea how long it would take them to build this, Michael Scott?
I do not know how long this building, I mean, I know, it seems to me the other project is still somewhat underway, but I believe they've had occupancy for some time. I think the primary concern was a direct relationship to an occupancy permit, not that Verizon is looking to stall the town. In fact, Mr. Soper, I think, is already, I see his phone, but so John, if you're available, please chime in. But he's already made contact with the individual, and that name may have been passed on to fire, but if not, it can be passed on to both you and fire and police. But all that said, I think that was the primary concern. It was a sort of a direct correlation of, you know, the conclusion of some negotiation relative to occupancy. I don't think their project is necessarily going to happen immediately, so obviously it would be in the town's better interest to have the conversation as soon as possible. But I think that was the primary concern. They're not trying to stall. I don't get that impression, frankly.
Okay. Any other comments?
As I said, what I can't understand, I mean, if we issue the CO, if the tower goes up, we start to use it, then what are we going to pay? And is 6 months or 9 months down the line, you know, we're dickering over who's paying what amount. I'm not quite sure, you know, how that will work as far as what the town is having to pay in order to use the service. So that was my only concern about looking at this broad language on it.
Right.
I hate to use, you know, within a reasonable time, because that can be construed legally in any possible way. But I would like something, perhaps.
No, I understand it.
Yeah.
So is an occupancy permit the right trigger?
Yeah, I think it has to be the occupancy permit, because first of all, if we just let it linger out for 6-9 months, the town's losing money every day goes without having an agreement. And I think it's important, if we're going to let them use the building, that we start getting the discount for those services. So I honestly think that's how it should hold up.
I'm in agreement. If the applicant wants, if there's some issue about the occupancy certificate as being the trigger, then let the applicant recommend a date certain. End of this calendar year sounds fine. If not, then maybe, you know, June 30th of next year. But yeah, it should precede the time they're occupying the property. So if he doesn't like the association, whatever.
Jim Ball, do you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm wondering if a time certain is available as well. Particularly, that might be more favorable, because if they delay the building, then it may not happen. So is it, you know, I don't know what kind of time frame this negotiation takes, but is it June? And I think year end this year is unreasonable, and that's 10 days away. But a time certain that they would provide us, because otherwise, after it's all happened, what's our remedy to go back and say you never did this? There really isn't one.
Yeah, I just find that, you know, this building's going to take quite some time to put up, and I'm hoping that these negotiations or this discussion of, you know, the municipal rates doesn't take a long time. So I don't understand why a deadline of a year to a year and a half, whatever the construction time period is onerous. I think that's a perfectly reasonable expectation on the town's part, and it does leave us some leverage with them to make sure that they actually enter into an agreement for rates comparable to other municipalities. The way they've rewritten this, it really just puts them at the burden of giving the town of Westborough rates comparable to any other town in the Commonwealth. It's may not even be that much of a discount.
Well, it may be
We hope it
inappropriate
is.
for our town and usage also. So, say municipal rates, well, that's a pretty broad description right there.
And we lose all leverage if we just give that
Because
away.
it just says to municipalities that use their services. Well, that could cover the entire state.
Yeah. So I think we leave that in there. Do we need to vote on that, or just leave it in there? and
If you
vote on
want to leave it in there, we'll leave it in there now. And then when you make your motion, it will include this unless the motion
So we'll
fails.
leave
I'll
it
just
in
put
there,
back
and when we motion, it'll be as changed tonight, and to include that sentence regarding, to include the sentence, "These discussions shall take place and reached agreement prior to issuance of the certificate of occupancy for the new project building."
Does it need to
Michael,
say
is there
final?
anybody?
Mike, sorry.
Go ahead.
Do we ever put the difference between, you can get a temporary certificate of occupancy, you can also get a final certificate of occupancy. Do we ever make the distinction between the two when we do something like this?
I won't speak for Fred, but he doesn't want to make the distinction, I can tell you that.
All right.
Okay.
So to you, when it says certificate of occupancy, it means final certificate of occupancy, not preliminary or temporary.
Okay, so I'd like to give the applicant a chance to respond to this. If you could just introduce yourself and title for the record.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Tim Twardowski from Robinson & Cole, representing the applicant, Verizon Wireless. And just to address some of the changes in our thinking behind that in this paragraph number 8, part of it I think was tied to the language in the first sentence. That's actually the second sentence relative to determining the discount rates. I know Mr. Soper is online and perhaps can address this issue a little more with a little more detail than I can. But my understanding is that there is a program that Verizon Wireless offers to municipalities that use its services, and as part of that program, they do provide for discounted rates to first responders, and that's essentially what has been offered by Verizon in this case. I think there might have been, whether it's a misperception or if it's just the wording of the original condition, which suggested that there would be some negotiation back and forth, and ultimately would come down to whether or not both sides are satisfied with a specific number. My understanding, and again, I'd ask John to weigh in on this, is that's not how it works, that there essentially is a discount program, and the offer would be that that discount would be offered to the first responders in the town of Westborough. So, with that in mind, it obviously was a concern for us that, to the extent that there was an expectation of negotiations, that we could be held up with a certificate of occupancy simply by somebody from the town, for good reasons or others, saying, that's not quite enough. We wanted a larger discount, and so we're not going to agree to this. And meanwhile, Verizon is unable to get a certificate of occupancy for its building. So I just want to give that additional background relative to the rationale behind the changes that we requested in this particular section.
Yeah, but I think the changes to the first half of that paragraph make it clear that Verizon's obligation is to provide comparable terms for that agreement to other municipalities. We're not asking for any special deal, but you make it sound like the town is eligible for this program regardless of this entire process.
Right, and that's why I'm asking, if John can weigh in and clarify, that's not a program that I'm intimately familiar with. John, I think has more familiarity with it. And you're right, that change to the first sentence, or the second sentence actually does address the concern, but, obviously we were only given one crack at making changes to the, to this particular section in the draft. So we did make those changes, and perhaps John can also weigh in relative to the timing and whether he has any objection on behalf of Verizon with regard to that the timing consistent with the proposal to put that back in the language as to the CO here.
Tom, this is John Soper. Can people hear me?
Yes.
Hello? Okay.
Yes,
Yeah. So what Tom is saying is correct. Verizon is willing to, it already has an existing program that municipalities are available to right now, and that's what Verizon would be willing to discuss with whoever it is in town that we would need to discuss that with. So I can certainly provide that right now, and those individuals can talk, and then those rates can be understood by all involved.
Well, it sounds like that it wouldn't make any difference then if we leave the last sentence in, because obviously, from what you said, it is an established program, and the town has been informed of some of it, and that to be able to come to a conclusion prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy shouldn't make any difference to you whatsoever.
I could certainly provide that information as of tomorrow. I just need to find the individual that you need to speak to, and you could talk to them about your rates.
Mark, I have a comment,
I
if
just
I
have
may.
one question. I think it would be for the building commissioner. Brett, what if the town got better rates from AT&T and didn't reach an agreement with Verizon prior to occupancy? Would you have to enforce this because we didn't have an agreement? Would that last sentence require you to not issue occupancy because we went with a different carrier?
No, President Arnold, no, I don't think so. I think if they're not negotiating with Verizon, my understanding of this was that they would mitigate an additional discount for the community as part of the project. That doesn't sound like anything they're presenting here. I think that was the premise of that condition, that assuming that the town was still using Verizon for police, fire, and DPW, that there would be an additional discount as part of the mitigation. That's not what they're presenting. But if we weren't using them as a provider, they couldn't provide the discount because they wouldn't be the provider.
So do we know if the town is already in that?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But again, I
Yeah,
don't
Mark-
think it was
Mark,
just
I
a
think-
regular program. I think it was meant as an additional discount for this community, for the project.
From the subgroup that we were in, Mark, that was my understanding as
Yeah,
well.
I agree with that.
So, Mr. Chairman, just to put a point on what you're saying, if the applicant is saying we're eligible to participate in the public safety program they have for every other community, what's the point of even having this in there? In other words, that has nothing to do with this.
Yeah,
So
but
they've
we're
misrepresented
not gonna
this, or
reach an
we've
agreement.
misunderstood it.
Yeah, but I agree with Fred's point. We were under the impression that we would be given a
Further discount,
discount,
right,
right.
that's what I'm saying.
right.
Yeah.
It wasn't just for the first, it was the town discount. It wasn't, it sounds like it's a discount for the individuals who work for the town, based on what this project is.
Well, that's what we had talked about, whether or not they're willing to offer that. I think that's. Jim Ball, did you have something?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's confusion here. We're talking about reaching an agreement. It sounds like he's talking about an existing program with set rates and set discounts for certain people. So it feels to me like we're talking about two different things here, and there isn't anything to reach. It's that we will offer this program. And to Fred's point, maybe that wasn't what was understood in discussions, but that's where there seems to be some ambiguity here.
Right.
I mean, it's the addition of that first sentence, I think, is the problem, because has informed the town it provides discounted rates to municipalities that use its services. And Verizon suddenly said, okay, we already have this program, you can have it. It doesn't allow us any negotiation room if we wanted to get mitigation and get more consideration perhaps for the town of Westborough based on the fact that the building is here in Westborough itself. So I think that's where the problem is. They've essentially said, yes, we have this program, yes, you can participate in it, but that's it. We have no choice on what the program is. It's whatever they have.
Yeah, so all right. The question I have, though, is how does a discount on, I'm just not sure that the discount actually, all right, I got to think about this. Anyone else have comments?
Yeah, Mark, let me make a suggestion. Maybe the thing is, I, quite frankly, would feel much more comfortable if we put this off till our next meeting. I don't think there's any desperation. This needs to be done tonight because they're not going out tomorrow to start building. And before we agree on the wording on this particular paragraph, I'd like to have some more information and find out what we're talking about as far as the discounted rates and whether we're going to be subject to the fact that whatever discounted rates they have, those are the ones we're going to be stuck with. So, as I said, I would like to get more clarification on this paragraph, and I'm really not prepared to go ahead at this particular time and approve this site plan until we get clarification on that.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't even have discussion and vote on the agenda. Are we allowed to vote if we don't have discussion and vote?
Sure.
Okay. All right. I think that's actually good advice, Hazel.
Yeah, I agree with Hazel, but I just also want to add, before, when we were negotiating with Verizon, it started with, we were going to add equipment to a tower that we found out before the last meeting that wasn't something that we wanted as a town anymore. And now the second item that we're negotiating is a plan we're already qualified for. So it's almost like we're getting nothing out of this deal. At the beginning, when I was in these subgroups, it seemed like, oh, we were going to be able to help the fire department, and then we're also going to get a discount for the town.
Yeah, so when you say this deal, this is a site plan review.
Yeah.
It's not, a special permit. It's not, we're giving you something, you're giving us something. It's, do they have the right to do this under zoning?
Right.
But there does seem that we need clarification on that particular
And Mr.
paragraph.
Chair, I asked last time, it was reiterated here, we need the representative in town government to say who we do business with now, how this would impact them to even pursue this particular program.
Right.
So we need some input we need to know
Yeah, I'd like to hear from the police
dealing with
chief.
this on a procurement basis for the town, and what do they think? They might be well familiar with this program. So before we come back to this issue, the applicant,
All right, so why don't we,
know what we want.
unless the applicant has objections, it doesn't sound like you're ready to start building anyway, but can we put this back to Jim to work out some wording?
I will reach out with to our town procurement officer and find out if, in fact, Verizon is our carrier. And if not, then look into what Verizon offers for a discount. Because if they're not currently our carrier, and if the other carrier offers a better deal, then why would we care about this?
Why would we even move?
Yeah.
Switching costs are significant, so.
Tim, you following along? I know it's hard on Zoom sometimes, so.
Yes, thank you. I've been able to hear the discussion quite clearly. I don't see any reason for objecting to continue this, but, I would like to, ask John Soper to make sure that he's in agreement. One last comment in terms of, there's, been some talk in terms of, what's in this condition is, might be viewed as inconsistent with the position that Verizon has taken on this previously. But, I would, point the board back to my colleague Mike Dymo's letter to the board dated November 19th. And this is precisely consistent with what was written in that letter.
Okay. All right, so let's go back this seems to be the only significant sticking point in the review, unless I'm mistaken. So let's get Jim to follow up with the applicant on this and with the police chief, the procurement officer, the fire chief, see what kind of savings we're talking about and whether it's actually a discount or just smoke and mirrors. Okay, all right. Thank you, Tim and John and Michael, for coming in. We don't need to continue this because it's...
No, the hearing's been closed. It will appear again on your next...
So we'll just put that on our next
January
agenda
meeting.
For...
Your first meeting in January.
Yeah, January 4th.
Yes, okay.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, gentlemen, thank you for being patient. Can we move on to 3038 East Main Street, and then we'll take up the TOV?
It's up to you. You're in charge of your agenda.
Yeah, well, there's no one here for the TOV, I don't think, so we're going to take up the discussion on the reuse of 3038 East Main Street because we've got quite a few people here on this subject, and they've been very patient. So, Jim, do you need to introduce this, or can we just go to someone from the application?
I would just go right to the applicant because I don't know all the parties here,
All
so.
right. Gentlemen, if you could introduce yourself, name for the record, and then whoever wants to summarize this project for us.
My name's Adam Boyce, 12 Old Coach Road. I work for Matthew Newton Sotheby's Realty, and we're representing both the seller and the buyer of 30-30A East Main Street. We have filed with the ZBA. We're meeting for a January 3rd meeting, and they recommended we speak with you prior to that meeting. Currently, its use as a 3-family residence, and would like to continue that use. And we just wanted to have an open discussion with you guys just to see if that's what, your thoughts are with the property, because we've heard, some people might want to see it used as commercial. We think the best use is residential, so we just wanted to have an open discussion with you.
Are you planning to restore the building to its original?
Yes. Babak is here. He's going to be the purchaser of the property. He has restored his current residence.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we need some facts about the zoning before you get into that, just so that the board understands.
All right. Do you want to?
Yeah, I would like to do that.
All right, go ahead.
So Adam, we typically inform the board as to where this property resides and what the rules are that govern the property. So I'm just going to do that, and then you can jump into the project that you propose. So the property lies at 3038 East Main Street. It's in the downtown business district. It also resides in the downtown planning overlay district. Their proposal is for more than 2 units in that district, which requires a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals, not from this board. The use currently is abandoned. So the zoning bylaws say that if a use has been voluntarily retired for more than 2 years, the new use must comply with the current zoning, the current underlying zoning. So they're proposing more than 2-family use. The current zoning says that they have to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a special permit. They don't currently have a 3-family. The most recent historical use was a 3-family, but they've retired that voluntarily for 2 years, so they have to conform with current zoning. A 3-family is allowed by a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals currently.
And what are they looking for from us?
The Zoning Board of Appeals is looking for us to comment on their proposal. Okay. The reason for that is because the Zoning Board of Appeals has to operate under what's required under Chapter 40A of the Zoning Act, which is to either grant a variance, which the applicant would have to show a hardship, or grant a special permit, in which case the proposal cannot derogate from the intention of the local zoning bylaw or from our local master plan. And because we just completed a master plan several months ago, the Zoning Board of Appeals would like the comment of the planning board as to whether or not they see the proposal being consistent with the plan for the downtown and consistent with our zoning bylaws. That's where we are. Now you can talk about your project.
Thank you. So to answer your question, Babak, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Babak Movahedi. I'm been here for 10 years in Westborough, live on 7 High Street. The properties on the corner of where me and my family live. And I've always looked at that building and with a pain in the heart, it's slowly is falling apart, and always wondered why is this not being restored. And now there's the opportunity for us to purchase that building and to bring it back to its old day glory, just like with our house on High Street, or just like we did with the next door house on One Elm Bay. You know, I guess the question was whether it should be turned into a mixed use, partially business, partially residential, and I really cannot support that. Number one, I think to do that, then you have to change the entire landscaping and all the parking, and there's so many vacant businesses downtown, and I think what we really need is, that's my personal opinion, more residential units downtown to bring people downtown so that businesses can survive. The building has always been, at least for the past 100 years, used as a tree family. True that it's been vacated for a number of years, and I guess because of that, it can lose its grandfathered-in status. But that being said, it is right now, if you walk in there, it is a tree family, and it could perfectly house three separate families, and you know, I think once it's restored, it will change, make a big improvement on downtown, you know, the view and the feel of the downtown, because it's right there at the center. And we're willing to put the work in it, we're willing to put the funds in it to bring it back to where it's supposed to be, but it won't make sense, at least for us, to do it as a mixed use, as a partial business, partial residential.
Yeah, interestingly enough, my husband's uncle lived there when he came back from the Second World War in one of those 3 apartments. So, and my husband used to go down and visit them there. So we know it was a 3-family a long time ago. And I mean, I certainly would be very much in favor of having it go back to a 3-family and renovate the building the way it looks. And I guess I'm wearing a second hat also because I'm on the Historical Commission, and we'd be delighted to see it come back and look the way it used to look. I think it'll add a tremendous amount to the downtown area, and I think it certainly fits within the scope of the master plan.
I'd like to add, Hazel, you had mentioned restoring. I don't know if you've seen where Babak lives at 7 High Street.
Are you the first house up?
Yeah, you did a nice job with that, Babak. Yep.
Third house, yeah, I've been in that. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
So that's the type of caliber of work that Babak will do. And then we also, it's very sentimental for the seller as well, Bill Adrian. It's been in his family since 1944. He purchased this from his parents. So we had actually offers higher than Babak's offer, but the seller accepted Babak's because he's going to preserve it and, you know, preserve the detail. And that was important to the seller because it's, you know, a sentimental piece for him. So the architect here is Paul Apkarian from Church Street. We did look at going a commercial route, but it doesn't make sense. You'd have to tear the property down. There's an easement on the right-hand side of the property, which accesses, it's the driveway, which accesses the garage for 1 High Street. So that takes away much of the usable land. So that's why we feel residential is the best use.
Pete, go ahead.
Since this house was once a 3-family house, and it's not going to have any implications on the sewage, I think.
Yes, town sewer, town water.
Yeah, so it's also not going to, we're not changing, we're not adding to the sewer system because it was previously flowing into it. So,
correct.
Yeah, so.
We are going to take away bedroom count. There's a 2, 2, and a 3. We're gonna make it. And Paul can speak better on this. They're not going to be any larger than 2-bedroom units. There might even be a 1-bedroom unit. So we're going to take away the bedroom count.
Okay. I think it's important, and it follows the master plan of vitalizing the downtown area, so I am for this.
Can you repeat? I can't hear through the mask. I'm sorry. Sorry.
I said the plan, the master plan, is to the major concept is to revitalize the downtown area, and I think this project is very monumental to get the town moving in the right direction to revamp the downtown area. So I am for this project.
Yep.
Yeah, my comment would be that the recommendation of the Zoning Board of Appeals would be to restore this to a three-family property. I don't think we would recommend at this time, multi-use or any other change to the use of the property for the reasons mentioned. And then the only other thing I would accent, which has sort of been brought up, is that the applicant did an absolutely tremendous job with the restoration. That's the street I live on. I watched it. He went through, I think, more than one contractor, spent considerable expense to restore the properties in, and certainly having walked by that property for 30 years myself, there'll be nothing finer than to have that restored to the character if you look at the features and details on it. So inevitably, I think another use would necessitate, for economic reasons, not a rehab, but more of a re-architecture. It would be a change probably in floors and structure, so it doesn't restore it. So for that reason, that's the recommendation I would make to the ZBA.
Jim Ball.
Mark, can you hear me? Because I just lost a Zoom picture.
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I mean, I think the zoning doesn't specifically allow for it. And the master plan certainly wanted mixed use, and that zoning does, but I agree. I think given the lot size, it would be, you probably have to tear it down and stuff a building in the back corner. And I think economically, to get a buyer to justify that, particularly with all the empty commercial opportunities, not just downtown, but all around, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So I think really, given the quality of work that you've done on your home and other properties, to me, that's a really big deciding factor here. Knowing that would be no longer sitting there with cars in the front yard and restored to its former glory. I do love that you're going to reduce the count on the bedrooms, so you won't have large families having such an impact on the school. So given all those factors, I think it's a great idea.
Jim Robbins, do you have any comments?
Just a question to the board. And I also think that restoring the structure to a residential use is a great idea. Any concern for the board about an affordability component?
Yeah, so can I, that was one of my comments. Few comments. First of all, where it's a residential use to a residential use, I think, the master plan would be supportive of that. I would like to see that, I foresee a change in zoning where that could happen regularly as a by right thing. But I'd like to see it within the footprint of the home. So my recommendation to ZBA would be that the existing footprint be maintained, and that any additions or, God forbid, taking it down and putting up a 3-unit townhouse, that wouldn't be an option. So I would ask them to make sure the language was written in that it just stays within the footprint. Within reason, obviously, if you need to put an addition on to house a bathroom or something, so maybe that, if we were to write the zoning, there would probably be a condition on any addition could only be like 10%. But again, we don't have zoning written to that. So it's really up to the ZBA what their discretion would be. But I would recommend that they not allow a huge addition to it, so that you end up with 3,000 square foot units, right?
Well, I think you could put that any addition would be in the character of the present building. I mean, in other words, that.
Well, or it could just be a proportional thing. It can't be any more than 10% of the existing square footage or something like that. Again, I don't I think that's their discretion, but my recommendation would be that they maintain the original footprint and not allow a substantial expansion. That would fall in line with going back to smaller units with fewer bedrooms.
And that's exactly what we're planning to.
And I think that's a beneficial change to create affordable housing too, just by doing that, because it's much more affordable to rent a 1 or a 2 bedroom than it is to rent a 3 or a 4 bedroom. That being said, though, typically we have a minimum affordable housing requirement built into all of our residential zones, and I would see that being maintained. Given the size of the project, though, I think, if we were to ever rewrite zoning on this, we would presumably offer some type of waiver to that minimum affordability requirement in exchange for an affordable housing contribution. That's something we've done in others. I would recommend that the ZBA discuss that with you, whether you're willing to make some contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust. Again, I feel like you're spending a lot of money on this project already, so I'm really excited about it being renovated and restored, and it's not a huge issue for me, but I think as a matter of principle and to set a precedent, it might be something that we should look at, even if it's just a small contribution. At least it sets a precedent that, that we're asking for that.
Sure, I appreciate that, but if I may just comment on that, I think we're not doing this for the money. I mean, it's very hard to make any money out of I did my house, I know how much it's gonna cost me. So I don't think we're even gonna break even. I'm just doing it because we love old houses and because we live on that street and we really wanna see that. So I think our contribution to the town would be to bring that back to life.
Sure.
Your point is very well taken.
But again, we don't have the authority to require anything, so I'm just recommending that they consider that, and they would have the decision whether they want to require that as part of the special permit or not. I don't, but I'm just saying that if we were to write zoning on this, we would almost certainly require some type of, again, I can't speak for the town. Maybe the town wouldn't require it. I would just, if I were writing the zoning, that's how I would write it.
And I would make an exception for this kind of property.
Well, again, I think that's why you build in a waiver ability and you allow whatever the governing board is to waive that affordable housing requirement and to determine the amount of the affordable housing contribution, whether it be $1 or, more. But I just think it's a good precedent to set to say, well, we're going to at least address the affordable housing in some way in all of our decisions on this. That being said, too, I'd like to see you have discussions with the Affordable Housing Trust as to a way, whether there's, whether they're willing to assist with low-interest financing or, some other financing methods that might help you in exchange for keeping one or more of the units affordable, because I think that's within their scope, and it might help you actually get this done without much of a burden later on. If you're borrowing money at 1% as opposed to 6% or whatever the bank's charging you, you might be willing to keep a unit affordable for the term of the mortgage, right? So, if you're doing a 30-year term, you might save money that way, right? Right. So I would encourage you to talk to them and see if there's an opportunity there for you and for the town to gain some more affordable housing. That I don't think needs to be a condition of the ZBA decision, though. I think that's just something you should reach out to them on. The last thing is I would ask for a condition that, the house not be demolished. Like, I don't want to see, the D-pod was really, the vision of the D-pod was to allow redevelopment of lots. So, a dilapidated warehouse that, is on a bigger lot could be redeveloped with, a multi-unit building. It wasn't with the idea of taking down a residential structure to put up brand-new, multifamily housing. And, that's why we incorporated a commercial component into the D-PUD, was because it was really, with the vision of encouraging 4-story buildings with street front retail the way we have on West Main. I don't want to see that here. I want to see that building restored, and I think that is consistent with the visions in the master plan. So the last question I had, though, historically, we've asked for easements along East Main to potentially widen the right-of-way for the town. Have we checked with the engineer? Is this an area where we would want that?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I hadn't thought of that. I can reach out to the town engineer.
I think, the gas station, almost every project that comes in on West Main, we just ask for an additional 10-foot easement along, I think it was 10 feet. We better check with engineering. I don't want to misquote it.
10 feet.
Well, you can't get 10 feet on the other side of East Main,
Right.
so, but it would be, and it wouldn't be on, it's a corner lot, right?
Right.
Yeah, I don't think it would be on the High Street. Is that High Street? Yeah. I don't think it would, I think it would just be 10 feet along East Main to allow the town to potentially do something in the right of way or widen sidewalks or whatever might need to be done. Put a
I would think town may own part of that property anyway. I mean, you've got a sidewalk there as it is, so I would guess the
No, I'm
town
sure we
already
do, but
has.
I think historically, we've actually tried to push that
Has that.
an additional 10 feet to give us some more flexibility. And again, I'm not 100% sure if this would be an area that would apply, but I think we should check with engineering, and I would recommend that ZBA explore that before they grant a special permit. But I would be, given all of that, I would be 100% supportive of this building being renovated. I'm excited for it. I really hope it's a successful project for you. It's
Been long enough, right?
Well, I would hope any questions could be answered. I assume you're going before the ZBA when next week?
January 3rd.
January 1st, and I certainly would like to see any question on that easement be taken care of prior to that time so that there's no holdup with your special permit, because I know that the ZBA doesn't meet that frequently, and you may want to get started or at least complete the purchase. I don't know where you are on that, as quickly as possible so that you can begin to work.
Just.
To Lisa Lane?
Yeah, I think Jim can help you with that, too.
So I don't know, you're probably familiar with that, Mike, that East Main Street has what we call a variable width, because it's an old street, and the width may be wider in front of your property or not as wide in front of your property. So, yeah, the town engineer would need to take a look at that. I can reach out to Lisa. I don't know what her schedule, I'm going to reach out to Lisa.
Okay.
I don't know what her schedule is for the holiday, and, but I will reach out to her.
Okay, so those are all of my conditions. I will actually say, I know I've seen chatter on social media about the house, and, I realize it's been a long time coming, but, I appreciate that the owner was willing to work with the buyer that wanted to renovate it, as opposed to just looking for, every last dollar. And I think that's shows a lot about the owner's character, the current owner's character, and commitment to town values. I really think that's important, and we should recognize that, because I'm sure that if the owner had had the wherewithal to renovate it themselves, they probably would have done that already. So I think that's important to recognize. So anyway, that's enough from me. Anything else?
The only thing I just wanted to point out, I had contacted the head of the Historical Commission, who's also with Massachusetts Historical Commission, and she said that make sure that you contact and talk to them, because there may be some funds available for renovations on these things on a historical property, and that you should really speak to a consultant at the Massachusetts Historical Commission to talk about possible funding that may be available.
Yep. So I think we should, I don't know if Jen wants this letter passed on to ZBA, but, you know.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah, I
well,
don't think she's speaking for the Historical Commission, she's just speaking as a citizen, but.
I think it's both.
But it may be, good for ZBA to ask for some type of recommendation from the
So
historical.
when they have the public hearing, I would recommend that she submit that to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay.
Okay, I'll send her a note and ask her whether, I'd like her permission before it would be submitted.
Can
So
you let us know when that's scheduled, so, because there may be one or more of us that wants to go.
So,
speak
yeah, I
in
believe
favor.
it. You just said you have a hearing or an application?
We made an application, and the hearing is on the 3rd.
We have a hearing on the 3rd.
And what's the date of that hearing?
3rd.
So
Okay, so
they'll open the hearing on the 3rd, they may close it on the
Weeks
3rd, I don't
from
know.
tonight.
All right.
I think, oh no, from last night.
It's a Monday night.
Yeah.
All right, I'll contact Jen and ask her whether she wants, whether she'd like to send something to the ZBA about this. Yeah. Because I know the Historical Commission, we want to have a meeting before now and then, but anyway, I'm sure that they would be supportive.
So Jim, I think that's all the issues. Do you feel
I'm going
confident?
to draft a letter and I'll send it to the Zoning Board of Appeals, but the issue of the easement and the town engineer, I don't know that you're going to get an answer from her, by the 3rd of January, to be honest with you. That's, 14 days, 13 days away, with 2 holidays in the middle. So you may or may not, but it doesn't mean that you have to have an answer for them to approve this. It could be that they could say, similar to what the planning board does, is that the easement width to be determined through discussions with the town engineer and Department of Public Works. They may not even require an easement. It's a suggestion.
And I think there was a question I had seen about the fact that though it's on town water and town sewer.
They are
as far
already,
as
we
you
have
know,
that
you may have to
information.
replace all the connections.
Yes.
We actually already sent a camera down the line. He's going to be replacing the sewer line to the street anyways, so if we had to replace connections, I don't think that would be.
Okay.
That'll come during the building permit with
Yeah,
all projects, it does.
I just saw some reference somewhere to that.
Yes.
So not an issue or a condition for the ZBA, but I serve on Sustainable Westborough as the planning board member. And I don't know how far along you are on drawings, but full gut rehabs starting in January for multifamilies will get considerable assistance from the state with regard to low carbon. So heat pumps and substantial assistance. And of course, a goal in the master plan is to reduce the carbon footprint wherever possible. So, for space conditioning and hot water and that sort of thing, something worth exploring with you, and we'd be happy to help you to do that on the Sustainable Westborough side too. But the programs are changing with the CECP January 1. The incentives aren't totally clear, but the seminars I've gone to suggest that multifamily full gut rehabs, and we have so few of those, maybe more coming, have an eligibility for funding and grants that other properties do not. And that's without regard to income qualification. It's really the property itself, the historic nature of this, the ability to restore the building envelope to a much greater thermal factor than it would have ever been built with it originally. And that brings heat pumps and the other technologies you guys know well into feasibility. So we can help you look at that.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, gentlemen, I think that's all. So thank you so much for coming in and for the work that you're planning. I'm really excited for it, and I wish you the best of luck and success in the new year. All right?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Hazel,
holidays.
Jim, Mark, Tim, Peter, Jim.
Next item on the agenda is continued public hearing for the amendment to special permit POV 2014-1 Village Commons, 1 Gleason Street, discussion on water line and completion of landscaping for units being occupied over the winter. Jim, just a summary on this. I think there's not a lot to discuss at this point, but I'll turn it over to you for that.
Yeah, so just a project status update. So I visited the site yesterday morning. The house construction is proceeding. The 2 affordable units that were outstanding are under construction. They're being framed and insulated right now. The commercial building foundation hole has been backfilled, graded, and the security fence that was there has been removed. The tiles that will be used for the terrace have arrived. They are stockpiled on the site for installation when weather permits. I don't know that that'll occur this year. I kind of doubt that that will occur this year. In the spring, they will have to loam and seed and landscape the commercial pad. And as you know, the planning board agreed with the developer that he could build or not build that building at his discretion. The developer has installed the water line as designed by the engineering department to his property line with Westborough Village. The water line has been appropriately sized and installed and witnessed by the Department of Public Works. The appropriate cap and valve for joining to a water connection for Westborough Village is now possible and would be acceptable to the town if someone from Westborough Village would confirm that they're going to do the work. Mr. Ansari has lived up to all his promises with us with regard to the water line in the commercial building. I discussed this matter with the Department of Public Works yesterday morning with the Public Works Director. He would like to get some direction from the Planning Board and from the Board of Selectmen. I've reached out to the Town Manager, and we'll talk to her about this week, about sending a letter to the Homeowners Association at Westborough Village, noting that we have addressed their concern and that their abutter has done everything he could do to complete the water connection. The work on their side will be up to them to complete. And I reached out directly to the manager of that homeowners association today, left him a lengthy message. I've not received a return phone call. The last time I spoke with him was a month ago when he told me that the homeowners association had not determined what they were going to do. But I will say that the developer of Village Commons has done what you've asked him to do.
All right, so I don't know that there's much discussion, but if anybody has any comments, questions?
Just to clarify that we need to draft a letter to the, if it's the Board of Selectmen, that's the Board of Selectmen. If it's the Planning Board, I understood that it was the Planning Board that needs to draft the letter. So I guess I would ask Mr. Chair that we just direct the planner to draft a letter to that regard.
Right, I think he said he was going to work with the...
I want to work with the town manager first.
Okay.
And,
I think it needs to come from the town manager probably because it's the DPW that is.
I'm not trying to orchestrate it, I'm
Right,
trying to
concerned
clarify
about-
it so
yeah.
that we can move the business on, that's all. If we need to review a draft of a letter, or is that something that can be...
It may go to town council. We'll see what the town manager says.
Okay, then everything's in process.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be supportive of such letter, and if it needs to come from us, I'd be supportive of that as well, but I would be interested to see what council says about it. So why don't you get together with the town manager, and we'll see what comes up from that. We'll have that on our next agenda as well.
It's certainly logical and appropriate that the applicant met the condition to have the condition waived on the special permit, and the rationale for the town supporting that was the complaint of this abutting property. The applicant did their job, so we need to put it in the record that they've rejected it.
The only other thing we need to, do you have a draft amendment, or have we seen it?
I want to, so first of all, you need to continue the public hearing because you have a public hearing open. I want to know what we're going to do with regard to the abutter, because the whole reason for amending this was to get a water connection between Westborough Village and Village Commons. I want it memorialized in the decision what we've decided to do with the abutter. So I don't have a draft for you to review at this point.
But as far as the abutter goes, I think we as a town and a planning board have proceeded the way we were supposed to and have gotten as much done as possible. It is now up to the abutting owner if they wish to do anything else. And I think other than that, we should just step back and say, okay, we've done what we were supposed to do, and that's it.
We will need that, but I think, I agree with Hazel. We created the opportunity for that loop to be completed. It's up to the Westborough Village to seize that opportunity. We can't do it for them, right? We're not responsible for it. We actually went above and beyond by creating this opportunity for them, working with the abutter to enable that. But I don't see really what would hold up the amendment to the special permit at this point. That letter not going to change our need to move that special permit forward and the amendment forward. I don't see any reason why you can't draft.
So then you've decided that we're done with this?
Yes.
I don't really see what that letter has to do with our ability to draft and decide.
Okay, then close the public hearing.
Well, do you want to leave it open and we'll close it? And
Yeah, that was my recommendation, that you leave it open.
I don't mind leaving it open. I'm just saying at the next meeting, I'd like to have a draft for us to review so we can close the hearing and vote on a draft.
I think it's probably important to have this all on the record, so I think moving in that direction is the best way to go on it. And just leave the public hearing open for the moment and finish everything next week, or our next meeting, sorry.
The other reason to leave it open is in case the abutters, the Westborough Village wants to come in and comment.
Yeah, but that's not going to make any difference to us. We have done what I think the planning board has been required to do and gotten that link done up to the property line. As far as that, my feeling is the town doesn't need to do anything else. It's up to Westborough Village, and if they want to hook up, that's their dollar and their responsibility.
I 100% agree, but you want to leave it open, right?
Well, I do, just because I think that we ought to be we need to have into the record both the letter, which will go out from the town, should be part of the record, as well as the amendments to the special permit, which is what we're doing.
Yeah, and I personally think the abutter, all of the abutters have had plenty of opportunity to come in and comment. It's been, they were notified of this by certified mail. So, but I also think that.
Mark,
Go ahead, Jim.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Jim.
I'm not sure why we're leaving it open because Farouk has done what we've asked. So the indecision of the neighbor, why does that hold up Farouk's special permit?
I don't see any reason to close it, though, Jim. Yeah, Jim, I don't see any reason to close it. So let's leave it open. And,
we're not holding him up.
But I do think we should instruct the town planner to draft an amendment to the special permit so that at our next meeting, we can close the public hearing and vote on a decision.
Fine.
That sounds
I'm in agreement with that.
Any objections to that? Okay.
No. Can I make the motion?
Go ahead.
I move that the planning board continue the public hearing for the amendment to special permit T/OV number 2014-1, Village Commons.
Second.
014.
To January 4th.
Oh, to January the 4th.
At 6:30.
At 6:30 p.m.
Thanks. You have to, that's not written in there, but it's, all right. I heard a second from Hazel. Any discussion? All those in favor? We have to do a roll call because it's a remote hybrid meeting. So Tim
Kaler, yes.
Jim Ball?
Yes, Mark.
Hazel Nurse?
Yes to approve.
And I vote yes to approve as well. That's 4-0 in favor of approving the continuation. Next item on the agenda is an A&R plan at 1600 West Park Drive. You've all had this in your package, but I'll ask Jim to summarize.
There's a couple paper copies in front of you. There's one in front of Tim.
You need a paper copy?
And there's one in front of Hazel if you want to open it.
Oh, I don't know, is this?
Yeah, I'm here just in case you can set up.
I don't know.
I think that's Farouk on the phone. Farouk is.
Yeah, I've been here the whole time.
Do you have something to say?
Farouk, go ahead.
No, I don't. Just wanted you to know that I was there.
Okay, thank you for attending, Farouk. I appreciate your patience, and we'll see you in January. Have a good New Year.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Okay.
Hazel, you have your own copy. It's actually right in front of you.
Okay.
So that you and Mark could share.
You can stay with us.
All right, Jim, can you summarize this for us, or do we want the engineer to do that.
I think this is actually a pretty simple plan. The lots are irregular in that the lot designated as 1600C wraps around B, or is it the other way around? It's the other way around.
B wraps around
B wraps around C. Those lots were formerly 1200 and 1400 West Park Drive. I believe they'll remain as those addresses, but because the lots have been changed, on this plan, they've been designated as new lots. Each lot has adequate frontage and access on West Park Drive. As you know, these are the lots to create future expansion over at 800, which is next door, and the Partners Project, which we know now is UMass Brigham's Healthcare.
There are two separate lots?
Two separate lots. Mm-hmm.
I have just a point of information. What is the frontage required?
125 in that district.
All right, so so you've got one that's 130 and one that is 119.
No, that's the same lot. Hazel, this lot, this is lot 1. Lot B2 goes all the way around on the
Right,
other
that's what
side.
I'm saying. The thing that the reason I raised this was that what you've done is you've got 2 points here.
Yeah, this.
So this one is not sufficient for frontage.
Right.
So what you've done is add this one for the rest of the frontage. It seems it was just an unusual situation because normally I would think splitting a lot and taking 2 ends of it and putting them together to make the required frontage is just something I have not seen before.
Yeah,
So that's the reason
The frontage just needs to equal the total amount
So
necessary
it's
for.
just a very unusual situation
It's
to do that.
125 and it's 130 here, right?
Right, well, this one's 119, which is under.
Yeah, but this one's already.
And that's over,
Oh,
but you
okay.
see, to take 2
Yeah.
arms of one lot so that you have the required, is just an odd way to do this.
But isn't 130 the requirement and this right one covers the 130?
Right, that one covers that, but it doesn't cover this one over here,
So
and that one's under.
It seems to me like it's just a way to put the open space where they want it.
Yeah,
It's to get
that's
more
fine.
area,
It's just-
is what it
It's just
is.
a very unusual situation.
You know, I mean, most of that lot is going to be open space. I'm not sure where they're intending them putting the building, but it seems that they just want to put the open space in a certain.
Right. And the other thing to remember is that you're not approving a buildable lot. You're approving a lot that conforms to zoning and that is entitled to a lot line change because it has adequate frontage and access on a way that exists on the ground. So I'm sure that there's a reason for the configuration of that lot. It's probably because we know there's wetlands out there and they want to make sure that both lots have enough upland to render them both buildable. So you have a lot that's oddly shaped, but it's necessary to have the necessary upland. Whereas the other lot, even though it's not regular, is contiguous.
Now, how many buildings are going to be able to be built on that? I mean.
So there'll be one new building at present.
One new building presently.
Yeah, on one lot. Yeah, and the other lot will remain vacant.
Oh, we think.
Yes, well, that's, again, it's to facilitate the construction of the Partners, UMass Brigham's facility.
All right. Any other questions on this? Any comments? Ken, you've been patient all night. You don't even get to talk. All right.
Yep, no, that's fine with me. It's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, we're just really just doing this to create the lot to support the Brigham's hospital, and then, you know, the remaining land is what it is around that lot.
Sure.
All right, thank you, Ken, for hanging in there all night. Jim Ball, you didn't have anything, right? I didn't.
Makes perfect sense to me, Mark.
Okay, great.
Ready? I move that the planning board approve the A&R plan for 1200 and 1400 West Park Drive, creating the new lots shown as 1600-B-2 and 1600-C-2 respectively on a plan entitled 1200 1400 West Park Drive, Westborough, Massachusetts, dated 12/14/2021, drawn by Beals and Thomas Incorporated.
All right.
Second.
All right, can I ask for just a friendly amendment to your motion? It's the English major, I'm not an English major, but it's the grammar geek that I am. I don't believe that we should approve a plan of an A&R when A&R stands for approval not required, so I would ask you to change the word approve to endorse. Is that a stupid thing? I mean, if you guys are fine with approve, I'm going to vote for it anyway, but I just think it's,
Makes perfect sense.
I think we should use the word endorse. All right.
And that's
I would
actually-
second that motion. Do you want me to reread the?
No, I think we just change it.
Changed.
If
I'm
you
good with it.
accept that change, I think we're fine. I don't
The
think we
de
need to.
minimis change, I would say.
Yeah, good. All right, so any other discussion of the motion? All right, all those in favor, we'll do another roll call. Pete Bouchard.
Bouchard, yes.
Tim Kaler.
Kaler, yes.
Hazel Nurse.
Yes.
Jim Ball.
Jim Ball, yes.
And I vote yes as well. That's 5-0 to endorse. And we all have to sign that later? Or you sign that for
I
us
sign
because it's
it.
an A&R. Right, all right. We have minutes.
Thank you.
Jim, you want
We
to go?
do, Mark. Hold on, let me just grab them real quick. Them open, but I got to find them again. They were from the 16th. Okay, I got them. Here we go. So Kristen had sent out minutes from the 16th. On a second read, I did just notice one word that I thought we should just change prior to the vote, which was under the Cumberland Farms project, where it said salt water, which I think maybe was supposed to be stormwater. But other than that, I was fine with them. And any other questions or comments from anybody else?
None
No,
from
they're
me.
fine with me.
All right, so I'd ask for a motion from someone to approve.
What was the date again? December?
16th.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of November 9th, November 16th, and December 7th.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, we'll do a roll call. Jim Ball,
Yes.
Hazel Nurse,
Yes.
Tim Kaler,
Yes.
Pete Bouchard,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. That's 5-0 to approve those three meeting minutes. Jim Robbins, any other business? Am I missing anything?
You have a list of your meetings for the 2022 calendar year. I just want to make sure that you're okay with those and you don't see any conflicts. The first meeting in January is 2 days after, or 3 days after New Year's. I just want to make sure you're okay with that. Sometimes when the meeting is close to a holiday, you have different thoughts on that.
Kristen or Jim, have you had a chance to go through and see if there's any other conflicts with either holidays or elections?
School calendar.
or-
Also.
I haven't done any cross-recognition.
So why don't we post this for now, or we can post a revision if you see any conflicts, or I would suggest that we post this for now and everybody go back and check their calendars, see if you have any conflicts that,
Yeah, when someone check the
foresee.
school calendar.
I might have to be remote on the 4th.
that's fine. That's why we have a hybrid, so that'll be fine.
Yep.
So, what else?
Well, I just think we should ask Northborough to come back. I know they're going to get a new town planner, but come back in like maybe 6 months to see their progress, just, because we're following right behind them in the process of the master plan. We could maybe learn some more from them. It's up to you guys, though.
I don't see any harm in it. Yeah.
They might, between now and then, they might run into something, and if we can avoid that problem and saves us some time and money for the town, we might as well try to.
Sure.
Maybe point of clarification, since Pete brought it up, we don't have funds remaining in any budget for the consulting funds for VBH were spent for the generation of the master plan. So we would need to generate some sort of proposal to go to town meeting to get budget. I mean, the budget's closed today for next year, for fiscal year 2023. Yeah, they did. They were submitted today.
No, I know, I don't think we're,
And we're not in it, is all I'm saying.
no, I
So-
think we'd have to go to the fall town meeting with a request for
Okay.
funds.
So we wouldn't be able to start the implementation committee then?
Unless there's money in
sometime
the planning board
thereafter.
budget.
You could start the implementation committee, but you wouldn't have the benefit of a consultant until those funds were approved, unless there was some other
They did have
source of
several
funding.
meetings for the consultant.
What's that?
What?
I was saying, as she discussed, they had several meetings to create the committee prior to bringing in the consultant to move forward, so you could accomplish that in the meantime.
Yeah, I mean, we could certainly, as a board, discuss the makeup. And
Yeah, but
who's going to appoint that committee? Is it going to be a subcommittee of the Board of Selectmen or a subcommittee of the Planning Board? And there's a lot of discussion, how many members is it going to be? Who's going to represent? How many at-large members? Those are all conversations we could have.
But the problem, Mark, is the fact that, I mean, if we can't, I mean, I would like to see whether we could get some money before then. I mean, the thing is,
Well, let me ask you,
means we're going to be waiting for 9 months before we have a consultant.
well, let me ask you this, Hazel. First of all, the warrant's not closed, so we can certainly
Yeah.
put a warrant article on. I'm apprehensive of that, given, recent discussions about
I know
tax
the
increases,
town
but
tax.
we can certainly ask. I will say that even if that wasn't approved, we would still create an implementation committee and
Yeah.
begin the process of implementing the master plan.
Jim, might there be some money in the planning budget that would allow us to use, I mean, I assume there's a line for consultants.
No, there isn't,
Oh,
unfortunately.
there's not.
No, my budget has been cut every year because they're trying to recoup money. And as a matter of fact, the small amount of money that I increased the budget for next year was $450, and that's been recalled. So we're at less money now than we were 5-6 years ago. That's just the reality of things. So
I'd like us to think about it a little bit because, we've done the master plan and I'd like to see it move forward. And if we're, in the best possible way, and I'm afraid that a holdup of this amount of time.
Let me talk to the town manager about this.
Yeah, because, somebody like VHB to help us begin the process. I mean, setting up a committee and sitting around and talking is not really going to get us anywhere. We need some guidance. That implementation committee is going to need guidance, and I think it needs guidance from a consultant. So the question is, if you could talk to Christie and see if there's some way that we can get some money to, even if it were for 5 meetings the way the town of Northborough did. I don't want to lose the impetus of the master plan at this time.
Right, I agree with that.
All right, so we'll have that on our next agenda too, and hopefully have a response from town manager about that as to whether we should sponsor a warrant article for funding a consultant. Okay? What else?
At the risk of talking about business on a personal level, I think we should congratulate our co-board member for producing the latest citizen to Westborough. Nolan Mark Bouchard was born last Thursday.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yes,
At the risk of doing that, I didn't want to lose Jim Ball before we.
No wonder you look so tired.
Oh, yeah, no,
Said, kick me if I fall asleep.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Number 4.
I can't believe you get on planning board and then go out and have a baby. That's like,
Yeah, and I got a puppy 2 weeks ago as well. So I have
Oh my gosh,
I
you were just-
have 2 dogs, 4 kids. I'm a crazy person, but that's why I'm drinking
All right,
this.
well,
It's called motivation.
Adjourn the meeting before the voters can find out the flaws in his judgment and thinking about planning forward.
We have under control.
congratulations, Peter. That's excellent news. I wish you all the best.
Merry
Thank you for that
Christmas and
moment.
happy holidays and Happy New Year to everyone.
Thank you, Hazel.
Yeah. Everybody have a great holiday. I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? All
Second.
those in favor, Pete Bouchard?
Yes.
Tim Kaler?
Yes.
Jim Ball?
Yes.
Hazel Nurse? And I vote yes as well. That's 5-0 in favor of adjournment. Thank you all. Merry Christmas.
Take care, everybody.
I
Be
don't
well.
think it's up.
Merry
Take
Christmas.
care.
Happy New Year,
No,
everybody.
mine's not up this year.
Oh, yours?
Jim's up.